I move that we resume our session, Mr. Speaker.
Session is resumed, the part of the House.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdia to report to the joint session on the basis of the letter of the President dated December 8, 2017, with a subject, quote, further extension of the proclamation of martial law and suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus in Mindanao.
Mr. Speaker, I join the motion of the Senate Majority Leader, and for purposes of orderly deliberation pursuant to our rules, any member may interpolate the resource persons for not more than 3 minutes, excluding the time of the answer of the resource persons.
The remarks of the House Majority Leader are duly noted.
There is a pending motion by the Senate Majority Leader and joined by the House Majority Leader. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the Executive Secretary is hereby recognized.
Thank you.
Sige.
Pwede, okay na dito.
ES shall deliver his report.
Thank you. No less than the Constitution mandates that the prime duty of the government is to serve and protect the people, and declares that the maintenance of peace and order, the protection of life, liberty, and property, and the promotion of general welfare are essential for the enjoyment by all the people of the blessings of democracy. These are the primordial duties and principles that compel us to come before you today to present the request of the President in his capacity as Chief Executive and Commander-in-Chief of all Armed Forces of the Philippines. Honorable Senate President Aquilino Pimentel III, Honorable Speaker Pantaleon Alvarez, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate and the House of the Representatives, good morning. Please allow me first and foremost to thank on behalf of the President all the members of the Senate and the House of Representatives for their continued support to the President and the entire Executive Department as we pursue our efforts to achieve lasting peace, security, prosperity in Mindanao and the nation as a whole. Last July 22, 2017, upon the request of the President and after a comprehensive assessment of the situation in Marawi City and other parts of Mindanao, Congress passed resolution of both houses number 2, extending the proclamation of martial law and the suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus in the whole of Mindanao until 31 December 2017. That extension of martial law period has enabled us to make great strides in quelling lawless violence and suppressing the ongoing rebellion in the southern parts of our country. I am pleased to share with you that Secretary of National Defense Delphine N. Lorenzana as Martial Law Administrator and AFP Chief of Staff General Ray Leonardo Guerrero as Martial Law Implementer have reported that the Daesh-inspired fighters and their known leaders have been substantially neutralized. Likewise, we have already liberated the main battle area of Marawi City and fast-tracked the arrest and prosecution of terrorists, all of which paved the way for the commencement of government action to rehabilitate the city. If I may stress, all these accomplishments were achieved with our armed forces and law enforcers exerting utmost respect for the Constitution and the protection of human rights at all times, as underscored in General Order Number 1 dated May 30, 2017. Last December 4, 2017, the President received a letter from the Martial Law Administrator, together with a report of the Martial Law Implementer, on the current security assessment for the whole island of Mindanao. Upon a careful personal evaluation of these reports, including similar reports and recommendations from the Philippine National Police, the National Security Advisor, and the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency, as well as the information gathered from local government officials and residents, the President is constrained to ask, once more, the Congress of the Philippines to further extend the proclamation of martial law and the suspension of the privilege of writ of habeas corpus in the whole of Mindanao for a period of 1 year, or from 1 January 2018 to 31 December 2018, or such other period of time as the Congress may determine in accordance with the Constitution. In support of this plea, the President wishes to highlight the following factual circumstances. Number one, despite the death of Hapilon and the Maute brothers, the known leaders of the Daesh-inspired Da'al-Watul Islamiyah, Waliyatul Masrik, or the DIWM, remnants of their groups have continued to rebuild their organization through recruitment and training of new members and fighters, and conduct financial and logistical buildup in central Mindanao in preparation for a new wave of attacks.
Pati yung shirt kasama.
Please note that among those listed in the martial law arrest orders, 185 persons remain at large and in all probability are presently consolidating their forces. Turaife, who is said to be Hapilon's potential successor as Amir of the Daesh Wilayat in the Philippines and Southeast Asia, has organized a group which has been monitored to be planning to launch bombings, possibly in Cotabato. Number three, the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters, or BIFF, continues to commit acts of lawless violence. During the martial law period, the BIFF has perpetrated at least 15 violent incidents in Maguindanao and North Cotabato. For this year, at least 89 violent incidents, mostly harassments and roadside bombings against government troops have been recorded. Number four, remnants of Abu Sayyaf Group, or ASG, in Basilan, Sulo, Tawi-Tawi, and Zamboanga Peninsula remain as a serious security concern, as evidenced by at least 43 acts of terrorism, including attacks against improvised explosive devices, or IEDs, harassments, and kidnappings. Number five, notably, the communist terrorists and the New People's Army took advantage of the situation by intensifying their decades-long rebellion against the government and stepped up violent acts against civilians and private entities, as well as public and government infrastructure. More specifically, the NPA has perpetrated at least 385 atrocities in Mindanao, which resulted in the death of 41 government forces, 23 civilians, as well as the wounding of 62 government forces and 6 civilians. Also, at least 59 arson incidents have been carried out by NPA in Mindanao this year, destroying an estimated 2.2 billion pesos worth of properties. It was these atrocities, among others, that compelled the President to issue Proclamation 360 on November 23, 2017, declaring the termination of peace negotiations with the National Democratic Front, Communist Party of the Philippines, New People's Army, or NDF-CPP-NPA, and Proclamation number 374 on December 5, 2017, declaring the CPP-NPA as a designated identified terrorist organization under the Terrorism Financing Prevention and Suppression Act of 2012, and the directive to the Secretary of Justice to file an appropriate petition for the proscription of the NDF, CPP, NPA as a terrorist organization under the Human Security Act of 2007. In sum, the factual basis that compelled the President to declare martial law and suspend the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus in Mindanao, as affirmed by Congress and validated by the Supreme Court, continues to exist, despite the liberation of Marawi and the eerie silence of in the main battlefield. A state of actual rebellion subsists in Mindanao, perpetrated not only by remnants of the DICE-inspired DIWM, but also by other local and foreign terrorist groups, including the New People's Army, and ready to explode anew at any given time. Public safety requires a further extension of martial law and the suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus in Mindanao in order to quell this rebellion completely. Joining me today are the Martial Law Administrator, Secretary Delphine Lorenzana, the Martial Law Implementer, Chief of Staff General Guerrero, the Chief of the Philippine National Police, Director De La Rosa, the Head of the NICA, National Intelligence Coordinating Agency, and the National Security Advisor, as well as the Secretary of Justice, the Secretary of the Department of Public Works and Highways, the Secretary of Labor, and the Secretary of Transportation and Communication, who can all provide you material information on the ongoing security concerns and continuing acts of rebellion in Mindanao. I leave it to their sound discretion if they wish to request an executive session, depending on the sensitivity or the nature of the information to be disclosed. Also present is the Chairman of the Task Force, Bangon Marawi, who can provide details on the government's rehabilitation efforts, and the other members of the Cabinet, who are more than willing to act as resource persons, especially on the socio-economic side. In closing, let me state that our armed forces and the police personnel remain steadfast in their commitment as a protector of our people and in their duty to secure the sovereignty of the state and the integrity of the national territory. I am confident that Congress will do its share in helping them fulfill this task. We do not ask for an unlimited martial law. What we are seeking is an unlimited peace. Maraming salamat po. Thank you and good day.
Mga kapuso, narinig
Mr.
po
President.
ninyo si
Majority Leader.
Salvador Medialdea.
With a reminder to our colleagues of Article 5, Section 7 of our rules on the joint session, I now move to recognize the Minority Leader, Senator Drilon, to pose questions to the resource persons.
The Minority Leader, Senator Drilon, is recognized for interpellation.
Wala silang binanggit na time limit dito, no?
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, upon request of some members pursuant to our own House rules as well as the Senate,
Congressman Fernandez.
may we request that the resource persons be placed under oath?
Any objection?
Yeah.
Tumatayo po lahat itong mga resource
Secretary,
persons na nasa harap ng
Please place them
podium
under oath.
sa panguna ni na Secretary Medialdea,
Everyone.
Opisyal ng Nika, Lorenzana, Guerrero, dumating na si Security Advisor Hermanos Esperon.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth, and nothing but the truth
Parang
during this
kararating lang ni
joint
National Security
session of the
Advisor
House of
Hermanos Esperon.
Representatives?
Wala siya kanina dito, no?
Oo.
Kararating lang niya.
Ayan, tapos
Abot
na
naman siya
silang
sa
ganun
oath-taking. Oath-taking talaga.
Senator Drilon has the floor.
Mr. President, if it is not out of order, may I move that the oath of Senator of Secretary Villaldea be given retroactive effect? Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, on October 23, 2017, His Excellency President Rodrigo Duterte announced, quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, I hereby declare Marawi City liberated from terrorist influence. That marks the beginning of rehabilitation," end of quote. Likewise, on the same day, National Defense Secretary Delphine Lorenzana declared, quote, "After 154 days of siege in Marawi, with the Daesh-inspired Mauti ISIS group, after a week, the Commander-in-Chief declared the liberation of Marawi. We now announce the termination of combat operations in Marawi City." Mr. President, the Filipino people congratulated the President and the armed forces of the Philippines for such decisive victory over this terrorist group. The question, Mr. President, is, would Secretary Villaldea agree that there has been no change in the situation since that date? Mr. President, insofar as Marawi is concerned, there is a change, there is substantial change, but the battlefield has now moved to other places in Mindanao. What do you mean by there is there no substantial change, or is there a substantial change in Marawi City? In Marawi, there is, sir, a substantial change. Yes, sir. Meaning, the question that we raised, Mr. President, are the declarations of the President, His Excellency, and the Secretary of National Defense changed since the time that the situation was described on October 23 of this year. Has the situation changed, or is it the same situation today that the Marawi City has been liberated from terrorist influence, that there has been a termination of combat operations in Marawi City?
May I answer that, Mr. President? Mr. President, the situation in Marawi has substantially changed from the time that our troops were fighting the ISIS-inspired Mauti group. And that's the reason why there is now this post-conflict needs assessment that's being conducted in Marawi. However, as situations develop later on, the ISIS-inspired other groups in Mindanao are also active, like the BIFF in central Mindanao, and also in some other parts of the Basolta Islands. Now, the reports now, Mr. President, is that they are actively recruiting again, actively recruiting some of the Muslim youths in the area. And that is what we are saying, that the rebellion actually has not stopped. It just moved to another place.
Yes. But the gentleman Secretary of National Defense would maintain that as of this date, there has been no resumption of combat operations in Marawi City.
Yes, Mr. President, there has not been any resumption of combat
That's correct. Thank you
engagement
very
in
much,
Marawi
sir.
City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. In fact, in the briefing yesterday in the Senate, the briefing centered on the threat situation in Mindanao. That was the caption of the briefing given to the senators yesterday, that the threat of terrorism continues to exist, from the Secretary of National Defense himself. He stated that martial law has resulted in more obedience to the rules and therefore must be sustained, and martial law gives the impression that law enforcement will be more forceful and that there is a psychological message being delivered by the continued imposition of martial law. Would the Secretary confirm that these statements were made yesterday?
Yes, Mr. President, I confirm those statements.
Thank you very much. In fact, in the letter request of the President, the grounds relied upon for the request for the extension of martial law, very briefly, is that the Hapilon and the remnants of the groups of Hapilon and Maote brothers continued to rebuild their organization through recruitment and training. That's number one. The Turaifi group was likewise monitored to be planning to conduct bombings. The BIFF continues to defy the government by perpetrating violent incidents. The remnants of the Abu Sayyaf group remain a serious concern, and that the NPA took advantage of the situation and intensified their rebellion. Now, Mr. President,
Can I ask the minority leader to wind up? Because
can I ask for an extension, Mr. President?
up to... Okay, I will give the minority leader an extra 2 minutes from...
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the situation, the Constitution is clear that Congress can only extend the proclamation of martial law in case of an actual public uprising and taking of arms against the government. That was the decision in the case of Lagman versus Executive Secretary Medialdea, which upheld the proclamation of 216 that required actual rebellion or public uprising. The government, through Secretary Lorenzana, as we said on October 23, declared the rebellion in Marawi City to have been terminated, and that it no longer exists. It is on this basis that we believe that the continued imposition of martial law and the extension of martial law up to December 31 of next year does not find basis under the Constitution and is in fact unconstitutional if this Congress would grant that extension. As clearly stated by Justice Hardilesa in his concurring opinion in Lagman versus Medialdea, rebellion under the Constitution refers to a state of rebellion. There is no more state of rebellion as admitted by our resource persons. These are only threats at this point. Actual armed conflict is the basic foundation for the continued imposition of martial law. And it is on this basis, Mr. President, that it is our view that the extension does not find basis under the Constitution and would be unconstitutional. The President cited the NPA for the first time in this extension. The NPA was not cited in the original request. Now, the NPA conflict has been there for the last 4 decades. Suddenly, in the extension today, request for extension today, the NPA is cited as an additional ground for martial law extension in Mindanao. Mr. President, I end this intervention with a question. Is this now a prelude to declaring martial law nationwide? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Minority Leader. Who cares to answer among the resource persons, please?
May I be allowed to answer and react to the statement of Senator Drilon?
Go ahead, sir.
First of all, sir, the request of the President as contained in his letter is not based on an assessment of an existing threat, but on the basis of a continuing actual rebellion. It's not just a threat, it's the same factual situation that this Congress validated and subsequently affirmed by the Supreme Court in the case of Lagman versus Medialdea. In that particular decision of the Supreme Court, the court said, or the court found, the existence of a state of rebellion in Mindanao, not in Marawi City. And therefore, as a matter of fact, the Supreme Court in that decision mentioned other events happening elsewhere other than in Marawi City. Enumerated incidents happening in Basilan, in Tawi-Tawi, in Cotabato, and elsewhere in Mindanao. The court even suggested or concluded that all this suggests that the rebellion in Marawi has already spilled over to other parts of Mindanao. And this is what our resource persons from the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police will care to elaborate if there will be further questions along this line.
House Majority Leader.
Yes, sir. We just want to add that we should be, or we should note that the termination of violent acts or firefights in Marawi City is not conclusive that the state of rebellion in Mindanao is likewise terminated. The Supreme Court itself said that a state of rebellion consists of many acts and not simply based on isolated incidents of firefights. I remember that the Supreme Court even gave the example of hypothetical people entering the premises of the Supreme Court, disarming their own security guards, raising the Irish flag, and saying that, or asking hypothetically that, should martial law be declared only within the compound or in the compound of the Supreme Court? There is always the possibility that elsewhere, in the buildings near the Supreme Court, at the PGH, at the Manila Science High School, other possible cohorts of rebel groups might be present and occupying and ready to attack similarly. As to the last question of the senator, that is this a prelude to a nationwide declaration of martial law? I suppose that that is more of a rhetorical question, Mr. Senator. All of this will depend on the factual circumstances as defined by the Constitution under Section 18 of Article 7. When there is a rebellion, an actual rebellion, and public safety requires it. And there's a third element added by the Supreme Court in the case of Lagman versus Medialdea, that there should be probable cause. So all of this will have to be present before the President can make use of his extraordinary powers under the Constitution. That is our reaction to the statement of Senator De Leon.
The Majority Leader is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize Representative Jose Lito Atienza of the Buhay Party List for his 3-minute interpellation.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative
Majority Floor Leader.
Atienza is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Isa lang po ang bumabagabag sa akin na gusto kong ilahad ngayon. Ito pong ating pinag-uusapang extension ay 1 year. When the Constitution, as constructed in 1986 and 87, the country coming out of a bitter experience of an unlimited martial law, which lasted for 14 years, decided never again should it be allowed. So I question the very nature of the extension request for 1 year. Yung original po ay in accordance with the intention of the Constitution and the desire of the Filipino people. It was limited to 60 days. So I question the basis of the extension request. Why, how, and where are you getting the authority to be requesting even for a 1-year extension of a 60-day original proclamation? Hindi po ba ito circumventing again the intentions of the Constitution? Because if the basis for the proclamation is no longer Marawi, it should be starting again with 60 days. I'd like to be enlightened on this, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Senate President, because otherwise the clear mandate of the Constitution and the limitations of the president, any president, not only President Duterte, but the future presidents of the land, will no longer be able to use martial law against the interests of democratic principles in the country. Ano po ba ang inyong pananaw? Ang pananaw po ng inyong lingkod ay iniikutan ninyo yung provision ng Constitution of 60 days limitation. How can the extension be longer than the original? Ito po ay very fundamental because this will affect our national democratic efforts, not only now, in the future. If we allow an extension of 1 year, then it could be extended for another 2 years, then another 3 years, contrary to the basic and fundamental intention of those framers of the Constitution and the national sentiments in 1987 when we approved it, that never again should any president be allowed to utilize martial law indefinitely. Kaya, kung mamarapatin po ninyo, ay siguro maganda ipaliwanag din ninyo ano ang basis nitong ating proclamation ngayon. A request for extension or a new proclamation? Because the Marawi situation has already been solved in many, many ways that you have mentioned.
Representative Atienza, please be reminded that your 3 minutes is up.
30 seconds, Mr. Speaker.
The panel may now respond.
May I be allowed to answer the question from a constitutional or legal perspective, sir?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. The matter of the validity or constitutionality of an extension for an indefinite period of time beyond 60 days is provided in the Constitution itself, in Section 18 of Article 7, where the power or prerogative to extend the original period of 60 days as declared by the President rests with Congress. In fact, the specific wording of that provision says, upon the initiative of the President, initiative only of the President, the Congress, in a joint session, may extend the period for such period of time, extend the validity of martial law for such period of time as it may deem proper or necessary. So it's really in the hands of Congress. The key to the length of the extension period lies in the pocket of the Congress. And all that the President needs to do is to show the factual basis for a continuing declaration of martial law and suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus. Based on that factual basis, the matter of determining how long it may be rests with you, with the Congress, not with the President. It's the President who will initiate, but it's the Congress who will decide. Now, as to the factual basis of the one-year extension, I will leave it to the members of the armed forces to explain why they believe that for now, 1 year would be sufficient.
Mr. President, may I add to the reply to the good congressman? Ang basihan po ng aming paghingi ng isang taon ay ganito. Inisip po namin din na magkaroon ng 6 months, pero ang sabi po kasi ng armed forces, nung magkaroon tayo ng bakbakan dyan sa Marawi, ay humugot tayo ng mga tropa sa iba't ibang lugar sa Mindanao, pati na sa Central Philippines, sa Visayas. At nang dahilan dyan, May to December, at least mga November, yung mga tropa na yun na nakuha natin ay nagkaroon ng mga vacuum yung mga operations natin sa ibang lugar, especially sa Hulo, Eastern Mindanao, at saka sa ibang parte pa ng Mindanao. At their operational tempo was set back by about 6 months. Ngayon po, kung hingi kami ng 6 months at hindi namin matugunan lahat ng mga security issues dyan, dapat nakababalik na naman kami rito. Kaya kami humihingi ng 1 taon.
Mr. Speaker, may I
The 3-minute rule,
yes, I'll close the interpellation by stating and emphasizing I am not questioning the basis for the proclamation. I'm not even questioning the intentions of the President. I am questioning the limitations dictated by the Constitution. Congress may extend by 1 day up to 60 days because it's very clear the President cannot declare martial law beyond 60 days. If we are not guided by that basic requirement and limitation, then I'm afraid the country will be open once again to the declaration of an indefinite martial law in the future. It may not be President Duterte, it may be President Fariñas or President Alvarez.
Thank you.
But we would like to stick to the constitutional limitation. 60 days is what it says. It should be 60 days.
With all due respect, Mr. Congressman, there is no provision in Section 18 that limits the extension to 60 days. It says, for such period of time as Congress may determine.
Naintindihan ko po yun. I'm using the same provision. I'm reading the same Constitution. Article 7, Section 18 is very clear. The limitation of the powers of the President. He can only declare for a maximum period of 60 days, for which he has to report to Congress. Any extension, he has to request Congress. That's why we are all here now. But we should limit our discussions on the basic provision which states the President can declare martial law and suspend the privilege of writ or habeas corpus for a maximum of only 60 days. I'm afraid we are not in consonance with the mandate and limitation of our Constitution today.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize Representative Mohammed Khalid Dimapur of the 1st District of Lanao del Norte.
Representative
3-minute
Khalid
interpellation.
Dimapur is recognized.
Auzu billahi minasyaitanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Speaker, colleagues, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First, I'd like to say that in the province of Lanao del Norte, maybe unlike here in Luzon, Manila, and other parts of the country, where martial law is synonymous to dark times, sa lalawigan natin, when we hear martial law, nalipay kami. We feel safe, we feel secure, because we trust our armed forces of the Philippines wholeheartedly. So when there's a request for martial law to be extended, as far as the province of Lanao del Norte is concerned, you have our 101% support. But I'd like to also bring into the discussion the ultimate objective of martial law, and that is to quell rebellion, secession, and terrorists. I'd like to bring back into our, perhaps, memories what happened in Lanao del Sur. The Mautis are established in Butig. Early 2016, the military operated in Butig and cleansed Butig of the Mautis. But after that, at the end of the year, bumalik na naman ang Mauti. And the military came again and they cleansed the Mauti out of Butig. Where did the Mauti go? They moved to Punapiaga po, and then ultimately to Marawi City, where we have the battle in Marawi. And now we're fighting different fronts, the BIFF, the ISIS, the NPAs, in North Cotabato, Davao, maybe in Bukidnon. So ang problema natin that I see in the Lanao region is the military might not have the manpower or the capability to really quell this rebellion or this secession. If they are working on it on themselves, they need to rely on their counterparts, which is the Philippine National Police and the local government units. For example, in Butig, what is the Philippine National Police doing? In Lanao del Sur, what is the Philippine National Police doing? When we were given our briefing yesterday in the executive session, my colleagues here in Congress, did we hear any briefing from the Philippine National Police? That is the essence of establishing normalcy in Mindanao. When it is no longer the military that is policing our communities, but it is our communities that are policing ourselves through our police. And what happened in Lanao del Norte and some parts of the ARMM is that NAPOLCOM and maybe because of the ILG removed the deputization powers of the local chief executives so the governors and the mayors no longer have control over the police, meaning to say that the responsibility of the police now lies on either the ILG or the PNP. Ang concern ko, Mr. Speaker, is, again, I just like to place on record, what is the police doing? Dahil you cannot keep moving our military. Attack sa Butig, move to North Cotabato. Attack sa Mari, move to another area. You have to establish strong police presence. And I'm hoping that after this manifestation, Mr. Speaker, na idagdag nila yung mga battalions natin in the Lanao region. Add more SAF, add more regional mobile groups so that we can patrol the Lanao region. Our police can patrol the Lanao region and put terrorism and insurgents at bay. That's my manifestation, Mr. Speaker,
Thank
and
you.
I hope I can get something from Chief PNP back.
Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I now move that we recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Senator Ontiveros is recognized.
Yan, si Senator Riza Ontiveros po ay tumayo din na kongresista dati, di ba, bilang kinatawan ng Akbayan Party List.
Mr. President, colleagues, good resource persons. On December 3, just this month, 2017, Malacanang, through spokesperson Harry Roque, said that the NPA was, to quote, a spent force. And perhaps even more impressively, in March 2017, Edgardo Arevalo, chief of the AFP, Public Affairs Office said that the military considers the NPA a spent force compared to decades ago. So if the NPA has been characterized by the armed forces and by the palace as a spent force until as recently as early this month, why extend martial law using it as one of the key reasons? Mr. President, as a former government peace panel negotiator, I know that martial law or any repression of civil liberties, such as the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus, actually spikes NPA recruitment. In fact, if we look back at history, in 1984, the military began its biggest offensive against the CPP-NPA. In 1985, just the following year, the NPA peaked its numbers with 30 to 45,000 members, and its acts of violence reached their height with 1,282 military and police deaths and 1,362 civilian deaths. So, bearing this in mind, what exactly do you hope for martial law to achieve with respect to the CPP-NPA? But again, what you yourselves, resource persons, have called already a spent force.
This is going to be a time-bound struggle by 2005.
Mr. President, may I be allowed to reply to the good senator? Ma'am, yesterday I said that we did not know where Secretary Roque got his facts that the
Maybe from the AFP secretary.
is a spent force, because just a couple of weeks back, there is an intensification of attacks by the CPP-NPA, especially in eastern Mindanao and also in southern Mindanao. The reason why they are now part of the martial law, they are not actually the main target of the martial law, but still the continuing rebellion of the ISIS-inspired groups in Mindanao, is because they are already branded as a terrorist organization. And in fact, because of that, they have also alerted or directed their troops on the ground to intensify attacks on military troops. That's why they are part of the martial law.
But good Secretary, ano po nangyari sa pagitan ng Marso kung kailan hindi lang yung presidential spokesman ang nagsabi, pero yung AFP chief ng Armed Forces Public Affairs Office na spent force sila, and then 9 months later, may intensification of attacks. Nakakamanghalang kung
Can I
paano
ask
biglang
Senator
nangyari.
Ontiveros to wind up?
I have 2 more questions, Mr. President.
I'm sorry, but time is up.
I will just await, with the good Mr. President's indulgence, the response of the good Defense Secretary, and then I'll place my last 2 questions in one go for the responses of the resource persons.
Mr. President, the reason why there was this to them.
Await, with the good Mr. President's indulgence, the response of the good Defense Secretary, and then I'll place my last 2 questions in one go for the responses of the resource persons.
Mr. President, the reason why there was this lull of operation of the CPP-NPA is because we were talking to them. Meron tayong peace process na ongoing ng kung ano yan, kaya naglaylo sila and they did not attack. And that does not mean that they are a spent force. Medyo nag-ano lang sila, hindi gumagalaw. But after that, they started to attack us, so that's why we are attacking them as well.
May I just note, Mr. President, to close this first question, that the good Defense Secretary has still not denied that the AFP characterized the NPA as a spent force.
Ma'am, can I ask you to state your
Yes,
2
Mr.
questions?
President, I'm going to state my 2 questions. So, lastly to that first question, why revive a spent force? Martial law is actually a recruitment strategy of the NPA. My last 2 questions, Mr. President, what are the limitations or gaps of our current laws? For example, the Terrorism Financing Prevention and Suspension Act and the Human Security Act? What are the limitations or gaps of these laws that the declaration of martial law might be able to address? What are the strategic advantages available under a declaration of martial law that are not otherwise available under these existing laws? Because otherwise, Mr. President, martial law is a last and drastic response where existing laws and policies are insufficient. And for my last question, Mr. President, what is the threshold of public safety used by Malacanang in determining that martial law is warranted? The letter of the President merely states that the government needs to pursue the bigger task of rehabilitation and the promotion of stable socio-economic growth. Rehabilitation and socio-economic growth, Mr. President, are not the objectives of a declaration of martial law. Martial law contemplates a public safety threat that is existing and pressing. So these are my last two questions, Mr.
Can we ask
President.
the resource persons to answer or respond?
Thank you, Madam Senator. Your question as to what martial law may add. What is the value added of martial law? That is a general question, Madam, and I would just venture to answer that in the same in this manner. Martial law is a flexible concept, but generally it is understood to be the exercise of police power by the executive rather than by the legislature, and with the assistance of the military to ensure public safety. So, because of its very nature, the things that may be done by the President as Commander-in-Chief are likewise flexible. There could be orders pursuant to the declaration of martial law that may enable warrantless arrest and seizures, or ban public assemblies, or take over media. Hypothetically speaking only, Madam Senator. So what we're saying here is the exercise of this emergency power of martial law is a flexible concept and serves, in the words of the Supreme Court, serves as a warning to the people or to the citizenry that the President is exercising an extraordinary power with the assistance of the military, and that under pain of arrest and punishment, the citizenry are advised not to make it difficult for the government forces to ensure public safety. Now, as to the other...
The threshold of public safety.
Threshold
Mr.
of
President.
public safety. Again, Madam Senator, public safety is an abstract concept. It does not have a fixed standard. It is determined by actual circumstances on the ground and based on information available to the President. So it's really a personal judgment call on the part of the President to conclude what is the limit of public safety or needs of public safety that will require the exercise of his emergency powers. There is no fixed standard to determine public safety. It's all a matter of personal judgment on the part of the executive. And in our opinion, this is a prerogative that is exclusive to the chief executive.
In closing, Mr. President, may I just note that the good
can you
resource
wind up?
persons, I'm winding up, Mr. President, the good resource person's response is replete with bothering terms and concepts that should serve as warnings to us. limitations and gaps are not martial law is not a general question. It is a very practical and pragmatic question that has very concrete implications for us, again, as in our previous history. Martial law is not a flexible concept. It is very strictly defined and limited by our Constitution. I hope the references to warrantless arrests, banning of assemblies, taking over of media are not a precursor to what may lie ahead, as asked previously by our minority leader and the good Representative Atienza. To
Thank
talk
you very
about,
much, Senator
Mr. President,
Alveros.
I am wrapping up in this last sentence. To talk about serving as warning to the people, that is contradictory to the so-called public safety that the actions of the executive are supposed to result in. And public safety itself is not an abstract concept. It is a very concrete good, public good that a government is supposed to deliver to us. Public safety is not flexible, it is not bereft of fixed standards, and most of all, Mr. President, all these issues of martial law, of public safety, these are not dependent on the personal judgment of any single person, not even our President, though he be our highest elected public official. This is why they are enshrined in the Constitution. They are not left to the personal whim or caprice of a single man, of a single leader, of a single authoritarian or dictator. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, ma'am.
President.
Thank you.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that Representative Antonio Tino of the Party List Act Teachers be recognized for his 3-minute interpellation.
Representative Tino is recognized. Please observe strictly the 3-minute rule. Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, nananatili ang posisyon ko na walang batayan yung unang deklarasyon ng martial law sa buong Mindanao at lalong walang batayan ang kasalukuyang hiling ng Presidente para sa 1-year extension ng martial law. At yung sulat mismo ni Presidente sa Kongreso at yung mga pahayag ni Executive Secretary Medial Diaz ngayon ay nagpapatunay nito. Mr. Speaker, hindi po ba sinabi ni Presidente sa kanyang sulat that the AFP has achieved remarkable progress in putting the rebellion under control? At hindi po ba sinabi ni Executive Secretary Medialdea na substantially neutralized na raw ang Maute Daesh? Pwede po bang ipaliwanag ito ng mga resource persons?
The panel may respond.
Mr. President, ang sagot po dun sa ginoong congressman ay ganito. Ang sinasabi po namin substantially reduced na yung strength or clear na yung Marawi of any terrorist ay Marawi lang po yun. It does not include the whole of the other parts of Mindanao that are also subject to the influence of these terroristic groups. Sabi nga ng Supreme Court ay ang nangyayari sa Marawi ay nag-spill over na rin sa ibang lugar doon sa Mindanao. Kaya nga sinustain nila yung declaration ng martial law.
Mr. Speaker, ang sinabi po has put the rebellion under control in Mindanao. Yun po ang sinabi. It's on the record. Yung Abu Sayyaf, ang description po, remnants of Abu Sayyaf. Remnants na lamang. No? Yung BIFF kanina, ang sinabi, they are committing acts of lawless violence. Yun po ang sinabi. Hindi pa nga rebellion, lawless violence. So, Mr. Speaker, kahit mismo sa request ni Pangulo, inaamin niya na dahil sa tagumpay daw ng AFP ay under control na ang rebellion. So wala po. No, inaamin mismo dito. Ngayon dun po sa NPA, sa rebellion ng NPA, sinabi po dito na kaya raw 1 year ang hinihingi ay para daw lubusang tapusin na ang rebellion sa Mindanao. Sabi po, no? Let me quote.
to quell completely and put an end to the ongoing rebellion in Mindanao, no? Matatapos po ba ang rebellion sa Mindanao sa loob ng 1 taon?
Mr. President, yan po ang objective ng ating armed forces na tapusin ang rebellion sa Mindanao sa loob ng 1 taon.
Mr. Speaker, July 2006, no, si Pangulong Arroyo ay nag-utos sa AFP na tapusin daw ang rebellion in 2 years' time, 2006.
Please wind up.
At ang Chief of Staff pa noon ng AFP, si General Esperon, na ngayon ay National Security Advisor na. No? Ngunit, alam natin na sa halip na natapos ay lalong lumaganap at lalong lumakas. Mr. Speaker, narinig na po natin ang ganitong argumento ni Pangulo mismo. Sabi niya, bigyan niyo ako ng 3 buwan. Tapos sinabi niya, bigyan niyo na ako ng 6 na buwan. No? Tapos, sabi niya, tatapusin ko ang problema ng droga sa panahong ito. Eventually, sinabi niya, hindi natin matatapos. Ngayon po, yan din ang naririnig natin. Bigyan niyo ako ng 1 taon, tatapusin ko ang rebellion sa Mindanao. No? Sino po ba rito ang maniniwala? Mula pa panahon ng Kastila hanggang kasalukuyan, hindi po nawawala ang rebellion sa Pilipinas.
Thank you.
Kaya po, kung pagbibigyan po natin ng kahilingan ni Pangulo, papayag tayo na basta may rebellion, ay may martial law, argumento ito para sa walang hanggan at walang katapusang martial law. Hindi po martial law ang makatatapos sa rebellion sa Pilipinas. Ang makatatapos po rito ay ang pagtugon sa mga ugat. Hindi po ito makukuha ng martial law. No, ang ugat po ay kahirapan, ang kawalan ng lupa ng mga magsasaka, ang pang-aapi sa moro, sa mga lumad, at iba pa ang kawalan ng trabaho, ang malaking agwat sa pagitan ng mayaman at mahirap. Yun po ang tatapos sa rebellion.
Next interpolator, please.
Mr. Speaker,
Maraming salamat, Mr. Speaker.
I move that we recognize Representative Gabriel Bordado of the 3rd District of Camarines Sur.
Representative Bordado is hereby recognized.
Before he takes the floor, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to appeal to our members. On the part of the House, more than 20 listed to interpolate, and 3 minutes of 20 is already a long time. And in fairness to the honorable members of the Senate, there is only 1 interpolator left already from them. So kindly limit ourselves to 3 minutes. You may explain your votes later on anyway. Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, on October 17, 2017, when President Rodrigo Duterte declared Marawi liberated from terrorist influence after 5 months of incessant fighting, I rejoiced, Mr. Speaker, along with millions of our countrymen. I thank the President for his decisiveness and tenacity. I commended the armed forces of the Philippines and the PNP for their bravery and great sacrifice. Subsequent events, Mr. Speaker, would further seal the total victory in Marawi. A few days ago, Mr. Speaker, the international news agency Reuters reported, and I quote, Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi declared final victory over the Islamic State after Iraqi forces drove its last remnants from the country, 3 years after the militant group captured about 1/3 of the Iraqis' territory, unquote. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me propound the following questions to the Executive Secretary, the Honorable Miguel Dia. Why is there a need to extend martial law in Mindanao for 1 year? Why 1 year? Will it not be in the best interest of the country if we will do away with martial law altogether and focus our collective efforts on the reconstruction of Marawi and the socio-economic development of the country? Anyway, given all the powers and resources at the disposal of the President, plus his unprecedented popularity, he can easily call out the armed forces and the PNP to fully address security concerns. Mr. Speaker.
Please respond.
General Guerrero will answer on the question of an extension for 1 year.
Yes, Your Honors. As to the extension for 1 year, we determined that we would need at least 1 year for us to be able to achieve the objectives and the targets that we have set insofar as finishing off the threats posed by the ISIS groups. And at the same time, would give us sufficient time to also address other existing threats in Mindanao.
Okay, thank you, Mr. General.
Visible, Senator. Visible.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Pangilinan.
Senator Pangilinan is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President. Magandang umaga po. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, we are here today in fulfillment of a constitutional duty to pass upon the extension of martial law in Mindanao. Narito tayo dahil ito ang sinasabi ng ating saligang batas. We are upholding and respecting the rule of law and the Constitution by convening today. Therefore, the question is the martial law extension consistent with the Constitution? Our acts must always be consistent with law and the Constitution. This is what distinguishes us from terrorists, criminals, or rebels, who we seek to defeat. For they have no regard for our Constitution or our laws. They have no respect for the rule of law. And I say, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, we cannot, in exercising these martial law powers or passing upon these martial law powers, go beyond what the Constitution dictates, what our laws prescribe. Otherwise, we will be in danger of becoming the monsters that we seek to defeat. Those who have no regard for law, order, or respect for the Constitution. My question, therefore, is, and this is directed to whoever would like to answer it among the panel. Number one, would you agree with us with this position that martial law is an extreme measure and must not be exercised whimsically or arbitrarily? Anyone may answer.
Of course, Mr. Senator, we agree.
Would you agree that it is an extraordinary measure resorted to only when the same is necessary?
Under the conditions set forth in the Constitution, yes, sir. Existence of rebellion and public safety requires it.
Yes. Section 18, Article 7 precisely provides when these powers can be exercised. And if we are to look at the long history of our challenges to national security and insurgency and rebellion, Mr. President. In the year 2000, March, MILF rebels numbering 700 attacked army camps, 9 army camps, raided Kauswagan Town Hall, held 400 civilians hostages, resulting in 36 people killed and 160,000 displaced persons. Martial law was not declared then. In 2001 November, in Sulu and Zamboanga, some 200 MNLF fighters launched mortar attacks on military camps in Sulu. Over 160 people were killed. Martial law was not declared. In 2008, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, North Cotabato, 1,500 MILF rebels. August 2008, led by Umbracato and Commander Bravo, occupied 20 barangays in several towns, burning homes, looting farms, displacing 280,000 people. At least 40 people were killed. Martial law was not declared. In 2012, if I'm not mistaken, the Sambo siege, Zamboanga siege, hundreds were displaced, 3 weeks of fighting with MNLF rebels. Martial law was not declared. In all instances, precisely because martial law is an extreme measure that cannot be imposed by whim and must be imposed strictly under the tenets of our Constitution. Which brings me to the question. Earlier, no more combat operations in Marawi. During the siege of Marawi, this Congress approved a martial law in Mindanao extended for 6 months or 5 months.
Just like to remind Secretary Pangilinan, please wind down.
We provided for a 6-month martial law in Mindanao while the fighting was taking place, while the siege was ongoing. Martial law was upheld by the Supreme Court in recognition precisely of this situation then. Today, there is no longer any siege. Today, no more combat operations in Marawi. Yes, there are operations elsewhere. But why are we asking for 1-year extension? Why not 6 months? Why 1 year? When martial law is an extraordinary measure as admitted by our resource persons. It is no longer extraordinary. It has become a norm. If we are to allow this 1-year extension, Mr. President. May we have a response, please?
Sir, we cannot, Mr. President, we cannot answer for the judgment call of the presidents at the time. We now have a different kind of president who has the political will to answer for the consequences of his decisions. We cannot make any comparison on the basis of the 2000, 2003, 2004 situation. What we have in hand is a 2017 situation.
Yes, we understand that, Mr. President, except that the point is that martial law must be exercised as an extreme measure, must be recognized as an extreme measure. And we would like to be clarified. It's an extension of 1 year, precisely in recognition of the extreme situation we're in, when in fact the Marawi siege is over. I would like to think if the Marawi siege was continuing, then perhaps there is basis to extend. And maybe basis to extend for 6 months, perhaps, as an argument in arguendo. But there is no longer any siege. And yet here we are allowing for a 1 year or proposing for a 1 year and us actually accommodating or perhaps eventually accommodating a 1 year extension. I do not see the logic and I'd like to be clarified. It would have been a very different situation altogether if the fighting was still ongoing, if there is still that siege. Then we can see that the situation is extreme and therefore we can proceed with an extension.
Is that the gentleman's last question?
And then we will just wrap up very quickly.
Okay, so can the panel respond, please?
Mr. President, may I reply to the good senator? Sir, maybe your perception here is not as bad as what's happening on the ground, but the troops reports otherwise. You know, wala na sigurong bakbakan dyan sa Marawi, but there are still classes almost every day in other parts of Mindanao. The class with the BIFF in Central Mindanao continues almost every day. Yung mga encuentro din sa ibang mga lugar sa Eastern Mindanao with the CPP, NPA, nandun pa rin. Basilan, Hulo, ay ongoing pa rin yan. That's why, ang pagkakaintindi po namin ng rebellion is as a continuing act, not only in one area, but it could spill over to other areas, which the Supreme Court has already validated in its decision that the trouble in Marawi has spilled over in other parts of Mindanao.
Yes, again, just as a...
Sir, can we wind up?
Very quickly, Mr. President, I agree that the Supreme Court upheld the martial law declaration then, but we also have to take into consideration that there was an ongoing siege then. This is not the case now, and therefore we have doubts as to the constitutionality of an extension of martial law for 1 year, given that actual rebellion, as was the case perhaps 6 months ago, is no longer attendant now. Thank you, Mr.
sir.
President.
Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize Representative Edsel Lagman of the 1st District of Albay for his 3-minute interpellation.
Representative Lagman is hereby recognized.
Mr. Senate President, Mr. Speaker, as we consider the President's request for extension of the period of martial law in Mindanao for 1 more year, we are strictly circumscribed by the very Constitution with respect to the limited grounds as well as limited duration of martial law and its extension. The limited grounds, as we all know, are actual rebellion or actual invasion when public safety requires it. Rebellion or invasion is not a state of mind or a state of fear. It must be actual, not contrived. A cavalier assertion that rebellion continues in Mindanao without any well-documented explanation will not suffice. There is no actual rebellion or invasion in Mindanao to justify an inordinately long extension. Now let me go to the duration of martial law or its extension. The Constitution's intent is to have a very limited duration of martial law or its extension in order to fully protect civil liberties and the maintenance of the rule of law. Reading the Constitution, I submit, Mr. President and Mr. Speaker, that there is no justification for a series of extensions because this would be against the intent of the Constitution for a limited duration of martial law and its extension. As a matter of fact, what is provided for in the Constitution is the extension of the original proclamation, not an extension of an extension. Can we get the take of the panel of resource persons on this particular provision?
Sir, there is nothing in Section 18 of Article 7 that will give any impression that any extension should be the same as the original period of 60 days. The wording is very open-ended for such period of time as the Congress may determine. As a matter of fact, your first extension was for more than 60 days already, and that has not been challenged anywhere in the Supreme Court, and that has in fact been implemented. So I think there is no basis for the legal argument that any extension should be the same as the original period of 60 days. You already did it in the first extension.
Well, a previous violation will not justify a subsequent violation. Well, let me read the provision of the Constitution. Upon the initiative of the President, the Congress may, in the same manner, extend such proclamation or suspension for a period to be determined by the Congress if the invasion or rebellion shall persist and public safety requires it. It is very clear that any extension should be under the same constitutional restraints on limited grounds and limited duration. And the Constitution provides the extension of such proclamation. It does not state that an extension can still be extended, because a series of extension would defy the intent of the Constitution to have a limited duration for martial law.
Please wind up.
Yes, I will. Can I request for a 2-minute extension, just like the rest, Mr. Speaker?
1 minute.
Thank you for your liberality, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, we heard the chief of the NICA, Chief Alex Monteaguado, say that Marawi is only the tip of the iceberg. To my mind, this is the understatement of the century. Because Marawi was the actual iceberg, which has been thawed and melted already. So much so that there is no more iceberg to talk about. The Marawi siege should have taught the military and police forces how to defuse that there is no more iceberg to talk about. The Marawi siege should have taught the military and police forces how to defuse a terrorist attack, how to engage in counter-terrorism, and how to foreclose recruitment efforts of terrorists without seeking the extension or declaration of martial law. To my mind, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, there is no actual and factual basis for the extension of 1 year of the martial law in the entire of Mindanao. Thank you.
Senate President, Majority Leader, Auzubillahi minas shaitanir rajim, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ako po'y taos-puso nagpapasalamat sa ating mahal na Presidente at napatay na natin ang pinakamasamang tao dito sa Pilipinas. Na-neutralize din natin ang pinakamasamang pamilya dito sa buong Pilipinas, ang Mauti. Kaya po ako'y nagpapasalamat sa ating mga sundalo at sa ating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Kami po sa Lanao del Sur, ako yung umuwi last week. Aking kinausap ang aking mga barangay chairman sa aming distrito. Pinahanap ko kung mayroon pang natitirang remnants o mga kasamahan ng Mauti at saka ni Hapilon. Ang mga barangay chairman po ay nag-report sa akin na mayroon pa. At sila po ay nagre-recruit ngayon na nag-aalok din sila ng pera sa mga nare-recruit nila. Para po hindi magpatuloy na sila ay makonsolidate at lumaki uli. Kinausap po ang mga professional leader sa amin. Karamihan sa kanila. Ang sabi nila sa akin, ipagpatuloy ang extension ng martial law. Yan lang po ang magiging solusyon para tumahimik ang lugar namin dito sa Lanao del Sur. Pwede ho bang makahingi ng sa mga military natin na ipagpapatuloy nila ang paghahanap sa mga natitirang mote at hindi nila po ito iiwanan. Sa atin pong kay Secretary Lorenzana, sana po humingi ako ng pangako na hindi nila ito iiwanan. Pwede po ba?
Mr. President, you have our word that we are not going to get out of Lanao del Sur and continue to look for the remnants of the Mauti.
Kasi po, natapos na ang Marawi. Almost half of the military na nakipag-away sa Marawi ay na-pull out na. So lumiit na ngayon ang sundalo sa Marawi City at sa Lanao del Sur. Baka po sila ay makakilos at makagalaw, kaya po humihingi ako ng word of assurance from the Secretary. Ako po yung maapila sa ating mga Secretary na nandito, lalo na sa DOH, sa Secretary ng DPWH, ng DSWD, na ipagpatuloy natin ang pagtulong sa mga evacuees. Sapagkat ang mga tao na nasa evacuation center ay hindi pa nakakauwi at hindi pa na nakamukon, hindi pa nakakapagtrabaho, wala pa silang kakayahan maghanap buhay, kaya dapat po sila nating tulungan. Mangangako po ba kayong lahat? Si Secretary Miguel Dia, pwede po ba kayo may mga maghingi sa'yo ng word of assurance?
Opo, opo. Ginagawa na po natin yan sa rehabilitation po.
Kasi yung mga taga-Marawi ngayon na nasa evacuation center ay wala pang hanap buhay. Kailangan natin silang bigyan ng pagkain, bigyan ng mga pangangailangan nila sa kanilang mga evacuation center. Ngayon po, nagtataka po ang mga taga-Lanao. Bakit saan kumukuha ng suporta ang mga ISIS? Baka po pwede patrabahuin natin ang ating mga intelligence at makuha na natin kung sino ang nagpipinan sa mga taong ito. Pwede po ba kayong mangako?
Yan po, ginagawa na po natin ngayon yan.
Nakakapagtaka po kasi, sila ang mas maraming pera na bibigay nila sa kanilang mga recruit. Sana po mahuli na natin kung sino man ang nagpipinan sa mga taong ito.
Ngayon po, nag-exert po tayo ng best effort to na mahuli po yung mga taong yan, Congressman.
So inuulit ko po ako at 10 ng mga kasamaan ko ng mga profesional ng Lanao del Sur, kami po ay sumusuporta sa extension ng martial law. Magandang umaga po sa lahat.
Maraming salamat po.
Majority Leader.
Senate Majority Leader.
Mr. President, there is one more senator who wishes to pose some very few questions. Senator Chis Escudero.
Senator Escudero is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I only have one question to our officials here present, Mr. President, Your Honor. What is the intention or plan of the administration with respect to the upcoming barangay elections in Mindanao, as well as the upcoming local elections in Mindanao? In relation to the declaration of martial law, Mr. President, Your Honor.
As far as we know, these elections will go on as scheduled, Mr. Senator.
I raised this issue, Mr. President, Your Honor. Again, I will only raise one issue insofar as the declaration of martial law is concerned. My concern, Mr. President, is this. Under the Omnibus Election Code, the COMELEC is empowered to postpone the elections, particularly Section 5 of the Omnibus Election Code, which says, when for any serious cause such as violence, terrorism, loss, or destruction, the COMELEC, upon petition or motu proprio, may suspend the election without any distinction, whether barangay, or local elections. Now, with the assent or looming assent of Congress to the declaration of martial law, citing as basis lawless violence, rebellion in Mindanao, would this now be used as a basis as well, if at all, for COMELEC to postpone local and barangay elections in Mindanao? It's a valid concern, Mr. President, Your Honor, because we have barangay elections in this coming May, and the filing of certificates of candidacy will be in October. Under the Omnibus Election Code still, the elections can be reset within 30 days after the cessation of the terrorism or threat or rebellion or lawless violence, which can happen at the very least after 2018 if we're giving an extension of 1 year. So may I ask where the administration is in this regard, Mr. President, Your Honor?
Mr. President, it is quite difficult to answer that because that is within the purview of the Commission on Election, which is an independent body, sir.
Agreed and understood. It's an independent constitutional body. But in the recent barangay elections that were supposed to be held last October, Mr. President, Your Honor, COMELEC already discussed this. COMELEC raised this possibility. Only that they were overtaken by events when Congress passed a law postponing the barangay elections. But COMELEC was in the process of receiving petitions already and comments for the postponement of the barangay elections in Mindanao because of martial law. Now, according to COMELEC, they will be in consultation with security officials, namely DILG, DND, PNP, and AFP, with respect to what steps they will be undertaking. So may I ask, earlier the answer given by our NSC was that it will push through and that the current situation in Mindanao will not or does not in any way affect the holding of elections. Would that be the response as well? Should there be petitions to postpone elections in Mindanao? Ganun ho ba kalala na posibleng i-recommenda ninyo sa COMELEC pag tinanong kayo na hindi nararapat o nababagay ituloy ang eleksyon ng barangay sa darating na Mayo? Or hindi naman po ganun kalala na pwedeng ituloy maliban na lang kung talagang may gulo tulad ng sa Marawi, yung talagang bakbakan, hindi itutuloy naman talaga dapat sa lugar na yon. Kung talagang nandun yung bakbakan. Pero hindi naman din siguro dapat sa buong Kamindanawan.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
we see no reason why the barangay election will not push through.
You don't see any reason why it will not push through.
Yes, sir.
Unless po siguro dun sa isang particular na barangay, 5, 3,
Yes, sir.
nandun yung bakbakan.
Case-to-case basis na po yun kung anong mangyayari man. Kung mayroong mga violent incidents dyan na it will prevent the electorate to go to the polls, then that will be an exception.
And the same is true for the coming local elections. It will be on a case-to-case basis, sir. Kung saan
Yes.
may upakan, may bakbakan, na talagang walang humpay, yun lamang kung sakasakalang rekomenda yung hindi matuloy ang halalan.
Opo, we will give the advice. We will advise the COMELEC accordingly if that happens.
One last question, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker. So, the declaration of martial law that Congress will approve and its extension for 1 year will not and is not going to be used as a basis to, in a wholesale manner, postpone barangay or the coming local elections in 2018 and in 2019 respectively.
Hindi po, hindi namin gagamitin yan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Speaker.
sir. Thank
That will be
you.
all.
Thank you. It's your turn.
On behalf of the House, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize for his interpellation the gentleman from Party List Bayan Muna, the Honorable Carlos Sarate. So move, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Sarate is recognized to make his interpellation. You have 3 minutes.
Maraming salamat, Ginoong Speaker at Mr. President. Ginoong Speaker, gusto kong i-rehistro unang-una ang patuloy na pagtutol namin sa batas militar, hindi lang sa Marawi kundi sa buong Mindanao. Ang pagtutol at paglaban ng bayan muna maging sa napipintong pagdeklara ng batas militar hindi na lang sa Mindanao kundi ang batas militar sa buong bansa. Ginoong Speaker, nakakabahala po ang mga tinurang statements ng ating mga resource person nitong araw na ito. Kanina sinasabi nila na ang batas militar naman ay nasa personal na judgment ng executive, no? May warning ito sa ating mga mamamayan na huwag gumawa at huwag labanan, no? Ang na lumalaban doon sa mga palisiya ng ating pamahalaan. No? Lumalabas, Ginoong Speaker, Mr. President, na itong batas militar na ngayon ay umiiral sa Mindanao ay talagang it's a psychological, no, operation against our people instead of sa usapin ng public safety. At Ginoong Speaker, ang kinatawang ito ay hindi matanggap ang naratibong sinasalaysay dito na buong giliw na niyayakap na mga taga Mindanao ang batas militar. Hindi ito kayang tanggapin ng mga residente, halimbawa ng Marawi at Lanao del Sur, kung na ang mga kabahayan ay nadurog, no? Dahil sa operasyon sa Marawi nitong mga nakaraang panahon. Hindi ito kayang tanggapin na naratibo ng mga lumad na wala naman sa Lanao del Sur, wala sa Marawi, o sila ay nasa Surigao, pero sila rin ay apektado ng batas militar dahil na-displace sila, ang kanilang mga komunidad ay binobomba sa panahon na nagkaroon ng batas militar sa Mindanao at maging ng panahon na kahit wala pang batas militar sa Mindanao. Hindi rin ho kayang tanggapin ang naratibong ito, no, na sinabi ng ating martial law administrator sa kanyang sulat kay Pangulong Duterte na without any reported human rights violations and or incident of abuse or authority. No? Dahil sa katunayan ay may mga naisampang kaso ng paglabag sa karapatang pantao. No? At hindi rin matanggap ang naratibong ito, halimbawa sa pamilya ni Ansari Sultan, isang 23 years old na naging missing sa Marawi City mula pa noong May 24, 2017. Kaya, Ginoong Speaker, sa pagkakataong ito, pwede kong maitanong sa ating mga resource persons. Kayo na rin ang nagsabi, ang batas militar ay isang psychological state, no? Di ho ba't ang ating bansa ngayon ay nasa state of lawlessness, no? Na kung saan under Article 7, Section 18 din ng ating konstitusyon, ang Pangulong Duterte ay tinawag ang Armed Forces of the Philippines to quell lawless violence and
May I
rebellion.
remind the gentleman, your time is up.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, may request for a 2-minute extension, Mr. Speaker.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pwede ko hong marinig yung kasagutan doon sa aking tanong. Ang buong bansa po ay nasa state of lawless violence since September of 2016 when the President invoked his call-out power. Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, may I be allowed to reply to the good Congressman? Sir, kung tinatanong po ninyo mayroong state of lawlessness sa Mindanao, ay hindi naman po yan ang katakaran doon ngayon, mga patakaran nila. Kundi, nagkaroon tayo ng state of rebellion doon sa Marawi na nasolusyonan natin after about 4 months. Pero po, yung spillover ng rebellion na yan, nasa ibang lugar. No less than the Supreme Court has ruled that it has spilled over in other parts of Mindanao, yung state of rebellion. And rebellion is actually is a continuing act, hindi lang sa isang lugar. Pwede silang hindi lalaban dyan, but they are still the grouping and recruiting to plan for another attack against any of our cities in Mindanao.
Salamat, Mr. Speaker. Dahil po may isang minuto extension lang ako pagsabayin ko na aking dalawang tanong. Dito sa hinihinging lumalabas na itong hinihinging extension ay hindi na lamang extension ito. No? May bagong expansion ito ng scope ng martial law. No? Dahil malinaw dito na ang target ng martial law ay hindi na lang ang nakasaad sa original na proklamasyon, kundi ini-expand ito to include the New People's Army. No? So, ito ay expansion ng scope ng martial law at hindi na lamang ito extension. Yun ho ang unang katanungan ko. Pangalawang katanungan, dahil nabanggit din dito sa sulat ni Pangulong Duterte na ang isa at more importantly na purpose ng extension ng martial law ay to pursue the bigger task of rehabilitation sa Marawi City specifically. Ang ibig hubang sabihin nito dahil sa in-invoke ang rehabilitasyon, gagamitin ang martial law para hindi na pairalin ang mga batas. Halimbawa sa pagbid ng mga rehabilitation projects at iba pa hong mga batas na dapat ay napapatupad, pero dahil ini-invoke ang martial law ay hindi na ho napapatupad. Ginoong Speaker.
Mr. President, may I reply to that? I think that is why yung pagdideklara po ng martial law ay this is a collaboration between the executive and the Congress. Kaya nga kami nandito ngayon na humihingi ng pahintulot na may extend yung martial law. That's why we are here. And it is up to the Congress to extend or not. Yung pong sinasabi nyo na maging tuloy-tuloy na itong martial law, I think hindi po mangyayari yon. Until we are just using, we just want this short period of time, not 1 year, so that we can pursue the rebellious forces there. Yung pong sinasabi niyong rehabilitation ng Marawi is just a side activity na gagawin namin. Na sa tingin ng Task Force Bangon Marawi, mapapapadali yung trabaho niya kung mayroong martial law. Pero hindi po yon ang principal na dahilan kung bakit gusto naming mag-extension ng martial law.
Ayun hong katanungan ko, sa panahon ho ba ng rehabilitasyon, yung mga batas, halimbawa ng batas sa procurement at rehabilitation?
Majority Leader.
Tuloy-tuloy po yon. Hindi po mapiktuhan yung mga batas natin.
Your time
Maraming
is
salamat,
up.
Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, before I move to recognize the next speaker, may I remind all interpellators to limit your interpellation to 3 minutes. There are timers in front and at the back because I've directed my floor leaders that when the 3-minute time is up, they will move for the recognition of the next interpellator. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Speaker, we move for the recognition of the gentleman from the Amin party list, the Honorable Mahmoud Mending, for his interpellation.
The Honorable Mending is recognized to interpellate. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assalamualaikum. And bilang representante ng anak Mindanao dito sa Kongreso, it is my bounden duty to convey the general sentiment of Mindanaons as regards this issue. Mindanaons are generally in support to the extension of a state of martial law and the suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, my first question is to the President's men. During the July 22 joint session, you gave a commitment to report to both houses of Congress as to the implementation of martial law. Every week, a weekly update to be given to both houses of Congress. May we know, Mr. Speaker, if this commitment has been complied with?
Mr. Speaker, I apologize for that mistake that we made. The Armed Forces of the Philippines has been reporting to us there at DND weekly or even monthly reports about the martial law, but for some reason, nothing has been submitted to the Congress, and we will rectify that immediately, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May we know if and when martial law is extended, how often would you give an updated report to both houses of Congress?
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, we will report on a monthly basis, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this juncture, it would appear that there is a necessity to exercise the power of oversight over the implementation of martial law and the suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus. Ang tanong ko po, Mr. Speaker, during the implementation of martial law, perpekto ba yung pagkaka-implement? Ang ibig ko pong sabihin, wala po bang incident ng pag-abuso sa karapatang pantao or doon specifically sa mga Maranaos or sa mga taga-Marawi na nagrereklamong nakita natin na nawalan ng mga gamit, nawalan ng mga personal belongings sa kanilang mga bahay, would you confirm that some very, very few members of the armed forces committed this?
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, mahigpit po yung aming regulasyon dyan sa mga abuso ng mga sundalo. Doon po sa nangyari sa Marawi, mayroon pong nagpunta sa aking isang may bahay at nag-report sa akin na yung kanyang bahay daw pinagkukuha yung mga gamit nila. Ito po ay aming pinaimbestigahan at kung mapatunayan na yung mga sundalo natin ang kumuha ng mga gamit nila, yung mga heirlooms nila doon, ay mananagot po yung mga sundalo at sagutin namin yung mga nawala sa bahay na yun.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the next point, meron din pong mga nagrereklamo ng violation of human rights na merong mga inarestong hindi dapat arestuhin at merong mga sinaktan na hindi naman dapat saktan. Pwede po bang marinig natin kung meron pong nakarating sa ating mga implementors ng martial law at kung ano po ang naging aksyon nila?
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, doon po sa aking arrest order, meron po kaming mga na-aristo na napatunayan na hindi dapat sila aristuhin at pinakawalan po kagad namin yon. Yun namang sa mga report ng nasaktan, hindi po nakarating sa akin yan. Wala kaming knowledge about any physical injuries inflicted on those arrested.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bilang martial law administrator po, tinatanong ko kung ilang warrant of arrest po bang na-issue at kung ano ang update dito. Pangalawa, meron po bang search warrant na in-issue ang martial law administrator at ilan po yung na-implement at ano ang nangyari sa mga ito?
Meron po, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, nagkaroon po, nung una po meron akong 2 arrest warrant, 1 and 2, and order of arrest pala. And then later on, I consolidated them in one page, in one sheet of document.
300.
And yun lang po ang nagawa ng ano ko. It contains about, it contained 941 personalities. Majority po rito ay may existing warrants of arrest from the courts. 1,120 po ang na-aresto, 65 ang na-charge. Yung pong hindi na-charge, pinakawalan na po sila.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ito pong nakalistang mga taong ito, inaasahan po ba natin na ma-aresto pa natin ito?
Patuloy po nating, mayroon tayong efforts by the police and the military to arrest them. Kaya hindi na po makita ito, nagtatago po sila. Hindi namin alam kung saan nagtatago. But the arrest is still extant, ongoing ang paghahanap sa kanila.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maraming salamat sa panahon. Inuulit ko po, ang mga Mindanaon ay sumusuporta sa pag-extend ng martial law at suspension of the privilege of habeas corpus. Pero hindi po nangangahulugan na absolute na suporta ito. Humihingi po kami ng exercise of the power of oversight over the implementation of martial law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assalamualaikum.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, next to interpolate is the lady from Gabriela, the Honorable Emmy De Jesus. I move that the lady be recognized.
The Honorable Emmy De Jesus is recognized to make her interpellation. You have 3 minutes.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Speaker, para sa susunod na tinig ng kababaihan. Para po sa kababaihan, naghahangad talaga kami ng kapayapaang nakabase sa katarungan. At para sa representasyong ito, naninindigan po ako na ang deklarasyon ng extension ng martial law ay lalong nagpapakita ng kahinaan ng kasalukuyang liderato ng ating pamahalaan. Bakit nangangailangan pa siya ng hakbang na gagamit ng tool of repression, warning, at ang nakakabahala rito, no fixed judgment, at no fixed judgment, personal judgment, na baka duduluhan ito ng isang pamuno na katulad ng naging karanasan na ng mamamayang Pilipino ay pamumuno sa ilalim ng isang diktadurya. Bakit hindi ma-address ng pamahalang ito ang patuloy na recruitment ng iba't ibang grupo ng mamamayan na naghahangad ng pagbabago na gumagamit ng iba't ibang pamamaraan? Bakit hindi kaya ng pamahalang ito na huwag gumamit ng militar doon sa pag-address ng kahingian ng mamamayan, partikular doon sa ating mga kababayan sa Mindanao? At ang konsepto po ng flexible concept na based on public safety, ito po ay isang nakakabahala. Halimbawa po, dito sa aming napag-alaman na mayroong mga proyekto na papasok sa Kamindanawan. At ang mga proyektong ito ay mangangahulugan ng pagsagasa doon sa mga paninirahan, doon sa karapatan ng ating mamamayan. Ano po ba? Ito po bang paglaban o yung mga mamamayan na magsasalita na sila ay hihingi ng paghinto doon sa mga proyektong ito dahil maapektuhan ng kanilang kabuhayan, ng kanilang kinabukasan? Mr. Speaker, I just would like to know, ito po ba itatawagin ninyong rebellion kapag ang mamamayang ito ay nag-organisa at sasabihin nila na ayaw namin ng proyektong ito dahil kami ay madidislocate, kami ay mawawalan ng kabuhayan, ang aming mga anak ay hindi na makakapag-aral? Ito po ba itatawagin ninyong rebellion? Dahil flexible at nandoon sa paninindigan lamang ng isang tao. May I know the answer of the resource persons on this?
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, hindi po. Yung pong mga mamamayan na gumagawa ng gano'n, hindi po rebellion ang tawag namin doon. Ang hinahanap po namin mga rebelde dyan ay yung mga lumalaban lang sa gobyerno. Yung mga ng mga hawak ng mga armas, umaatake ng mga tropa natin, pulis at saka kasundaluhan. Yun po, wala kaming ginagawang mga kaharahasan doon sa mga mamamayan.
Yun po, nakakabahala, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Senate President. Kasi ang problema po, napatunayan naman na kapag kahit po doon sa sulat, binanggit na isang batayan ay yung paggugrupo-grupo ng mamamayan na nagsasalita para sabihin yung kanilang mga kahingian. Nakaandun po yan sa sulat. At
your time is up.
I just would like to register, kung kayo po ay may intelligence, bakit hindi ang gawin yung prevention? Ay yung sinasabi nyo na alam nyo precise nasaan dumadating, bakit hindi kagad arestuhin? Hindi pa ba sasapat yung intelligence? Kaya ang nakakabahala dito, baka yung mga gagawin ng mamamayan ay yung dahil ang martial law nga ay tool of repression, this will really entail human rights
Mr.
violations.
President, Mr. Speaker, with the indulgence of the lady, just a gracious reminder that her 3 minutes has expired. The floor leader is constrained to move for the next
Mula po sa tinig ng kababaihan, naninindigan kami na hindi
Majority
sagot
Leader,
ang extension ng martial law.
Mr. Speaker,
Proceed with your,
Mr.
next
President,
speaker.
I move that we next recognize the distinguished gentleman from the 1st District of Lanao del Sur, the Honorable Ansaruddin Adyong.
The Honorable Adjong is recognized to make his interpellation.
Mr. Sen.
You have 3 minutes.
Mr. Senate President, Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this representation would like to express his deep gratitude to President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, this honorable august body, to our troops and policemen, to our doctors and medical professionals, and to the Filipino people for reaching out and helping our brothers and sisters in Marawi City in the darkest moment in Marawi's history. The Honorable Senate President, the Honorable Speaker, now that the hostilities have ended, the threat of local terrorist groups is still present.
We should not be relaxed in our efforts against possible recruitment of new members. The war has resulted in the loss of many innocent lives and the destruction of homes, public structures, and institutions. There is a need, therefore, to stop violent extremism, secure the rehabilitation efforts, and ensure public safety. Mr. Senate President and Mr. Speaker, the end of the Marawi siege entails a long process of healing, reconciliation, and rehabilitation. The reconstruction of Marawi is not just building homes and structures, but also eradicating extremism, restoring broken relationships, and promoting peace and justice. Marawi will be able to stand again if there is a holistic approach to the rehabilitation process. We need to secure the rehabilitation efforts so that our people could recover morally and spiritually. The rehabilitation is not going to be easy. There will be changes, but I believe that if we work diligently and sincerely, we can rebuild Marawi and achieve long-term peace in Mindanao. Mr. Senate President, Mr. Speaker, the local government officials of Lanao del Sur are one in supporting the President for the extension of martial law in Mindanao. In the interest of peace in Mindanao, a successful rehabilitation of Marawi and the future of our children, I support the extension of martial law in Mindanao. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, next to interpellate is the gentleman from Anak Pawis. I move that you recognize the Honorable Ariel Casilaw.
The Honorable Casilaw is recognized to interpellate.
Maraming
You have
salamat,
3
Mr.
minutes.
Speaker. Marami po tayong naririnig sa kapwa natin mga mambabatas, maging sa media, wala kunong paglabag sa karapatang pantao sa panahon ng martial law. Pero iba po ang makaranasan, testimonyang na ibahagi sa kinatawang ito. With the indulgence of the Speaker, may move that I be allowed to present a Mindanaoan, a victim of martial law, during the implementation of martial law and the expansion of the earth, to be here to testify physically how they experience the brutality, the abuses outside of the perimeters of Marawi, Mr. Speaker. It's a motion that this representation be allowed to present a resource person to
Your
testify.
Honor, you are only allowed to interpolate. That is the rule.
There was a precedent during the joint session last July 22, Mr. Speaker, if it can be possible to also allow a resource person.
It's Majority Leader.
Mr. President, indeed there was a precedent in the last joint session. That's why many complained, even in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. There were so many complaints. Earlier, Senator De Veras was seeking the same permission. And the Majority Leader of the House and myself consulted the other members, and they did not agree. So unless you are a representative of your district or the people, then you can speak in a joint session. Otherwise, you have to be either a resource person or someone who is going to be allowed by the House itself in joint session, Mr. President. So I object to the motion of the Congressman.
The ruling has been made. It's not allowed. You may proceed and make use of your time.
There was an earlier motion, Mr. Speaker. I think that was a motion that to be voted upon.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Majority Leader, will you answer the question, the query of
Mr.
the gentleman.
Speaker, Your Honor, there was a ruling by the chair that such was not permissible. So we appeal to our colleagues. No? There are a lot more of our colleagues who wish to avail of the time, or I will be constrained, therefore, to already recognize those that wish to avail of the time, considering that our resource persons and we are in joint session.
Okay,
So
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Again, they lack the opportunity to present. They don't have access to the media. All they can do is to seek the attention of the honorable members of both houses to hear them out. But since my motion was denied, may I know from General Guerrero, in your letter to the President, page 2, first paragraph, you stated here, while the government is preoccupied with addressing the challenges being posed by Daesh, the CPP, the communist terrorists, took advantage with the 49-year rebellion by way of political mobilization through army, party, and mass-based build-up, rallies and pickets and demonstration. May I know if you confirm that these activities such as picket, rallies, is an act of rebellion? General Guerrero.
It was not specifically stated that it was an act of rebellion.
Yes, but you stated here that form parts of the activities of the communist terrorists. Now, Mr. Speaker, may I ask, during the briefing yesterday, the NICA spokesperson stated that part of the request of the President in number 5, which includes a new item, the communist terrorists, including CPP, NP, NDF, and legal fronts. May I ask the martial law administrator, how do you define legal fronts?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, I define legal fronts as an organization that is pursuing legal objectives.
It's very vague, Mr. Martial Law Administrator. How do we distinguish that definition between political dissent, redress of grievances against the government?
Political dissent per se is not bad, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President. But political dissent in support of an illegal organization like the CPP in PA makes them illegal as well.
Although I cannot accept that definition and your explanation, Mr. Speaker, again, this representation for the last almost a year during the implementation of martial law, I have received 56 documented political killings of peasants, active members of Kilusang Magbubukid ng Pilipinas in Mindanao, being accused of legal fronts of the NPA. If this will continue with your justification, you are opening
Honorable
the floodgates
Pasilaw,
of
your
human rights
time is
violation.
up.
Thank you po.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, with the expiration of 3 minutes, we move that we recognize the next interpellator, the distinguished gentleman from the 2nd District of Cagayan de Oro, the Honorable Maximo Rodriguez.
The Honorable Rodriguez is recognized to make his interpellation. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, Senate President, may I direct my interpellation to the Armed Forces of the Philippines, the Philippine National Police. Firstly, it seems that the application for extension of martial law shows a sign of weakness to armed forces. Why? Because, as you know, first, you bungled intelligence network during or before the Marawi crisis. You bungled it. There was a war which had been prevented, and the war was very costly. Secondly, we have 6 months. You had 6 months. Yet, you focused on the war. We won. But the frame for a lasting peace should have been embedded in those places in Mindanao where you were present. You poured in so many battalions in Mindanao, and yet you were not prepared to quell potential threats to the island. And so this is a quick question. Can you promise us that in the next months to come, you would be able to subdue the potential threats that you are now presenting, and furthermore, do best in the intelligence so that to prevent any untoward war that will come up? That's my first question, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. What we can do is just assure you that we will be doing our best to make sure that the lessons that we have learned out of this experience will be put into good use, and that, as you have pointed out, we will strengthen our intelligence and other capabilities for us to be able to succeed.
Thank you. Secondly, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. No? I support the extension, but with caution. Why? Because this is another extension. The first extension, we give you a blanket authority to do whatever you can. But this time, I demand that you will report in Congress, quarterly report, on the activities and the programs that you have done during the 1 year extension. Because precisely if the 1 year is too long, we can shorten it to 6 months, if that can be done. Are you okay with that?
Yes, sir. We will do that, sir.
Well, it's Congress oversight functions to see what you're doing. And transparency should be had. We are way out of confidentiality anymore. This is out of the box. You have to show to us what is to be done and what you have done. And as a sign of gratitude also, I thank you for keeping the peace in Cagayan de Oro City, my city, which is just 1 hour away from Iligan.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, we welcome the suggestion of the good congressman from Cagayan de Oro, so that it will become a cooperation and collaboration between us in solving the problems of Mindanao. Thank you, sir.
With that, thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, Senate President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, next to interpellate is the lady from ACT Teacher. I move that we recognize the Honorable Franz Castro.
Franz Castro is recognized to make her interpellation. You have 3 minutes.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Speakers. Sa mga ipinahayag ng mga resource speakers natin mula kahapon hanggang ngayon, walang nakikita ang representasyong ito na batayan para ipagpatuloy pa, lalo pa 1 taon ang martial law. Matanong ko lang po, Mr. Speaker, dahil po hindi naman natin nakikita yung actual invasion o rebellion sa Mindanao. Hindi po ba ang nasa likod ng ganitong pakana ay upang supilin ang mga protesta, pagtutol, paglaban, o ang sinasabing sagabal na NPA sa lalo pang expansion ng Mindanao para sa corporate plantation, mga big mining companies at mga export-driven industries. So ito po at mga construction at infrastructure para suportahan itong infrastructure na ito. Pwede po bang malaman ito doon sa ating task force na rehabilitation? Hindi po ba yung extension na ito ay plano lang na supilin ang mga paglaban, protesta ng mga mamamayan laban sa plunder ng ating environment and other resources? Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, wala po dito yung chairman ng task force Bangon Marawi. Pero balikan ko po yung sinabi ni Congresswoman about kung kasama yung ang tawag nitong mga grupo dyan na lumalaban sa mga against plantations or everything. I think mayroon tayong mga batas dyan na sumasakop sa mga pagpapatakbo ng mga plantasyon at saka yung ano pa dyan especially sa Eastern Mindanao. At sila po yung tumutugon sa mga suliranin ng mga plantation workers at saka yung plantation owners. Ang amin po doon ay mapanatili lang ang katahimikan sa lugar para naman hindi magdadumanak ang dugo at hindi magkaroon ng mga violenting insidente.
Sa nakaraang martial law, sa kasalukuyang martial law, Mr. Speaker, magkano ba ang nagastos na pondo sa loob ng 7 buwan na implementasyon nito? Maaari po bang malaman sa ating administrator?
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, ang nagastos po doon sa buong panahon ng martial law nung itong martial law na ito mula noong 23 May hanggang sa kasalukuyan, ang gastos po ng military lang sa operation ay maabot ng mga 4 billion, 4 na billion po. Hindi pa kasama yun yung mga ginastos ng ibang ahensya katulad ng DSWD sa pagsuporta sa mga IDPs, yung mga internally displaced people.
4 billion. Yung rehabilitation po sa Marawi, totoo po pa na kailangan natin ng 90 billion?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, yun po ang estimate na pinalabas ng mayor ng Marawi City. Pero kasalukuyan po ay meron tayong mga grupo dyan at tinatawag natin na post-conflict needs assessment na nag-a-assess o tinitingnan nila, tinisurvey nila yung area kung magkano talaga ang gugugulin natin para may rehabilitate ang Marawi. Maaari pong tama yung figure na 98 billion, maaaring mas mababa o maaring mas mataas pa pagkatapos po ng assessment.
Sa paglilinis po dun sa Marawi, tama po ba na 3 to 4 years pa ang gugugulin para malinis lang yung ginawa na martial law sa Marawi?
Hindi
o
po natin alam,
sa Marawi?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, hindi po natin alam kung ang gaano katagal talaga eksakto. Pero sa nakikita ko po sa akin na I'm not an engineer, I'm just a layman. And the way I look at it when we went around in Marawi is siguro sa tingin ko minimum 3 years. 3 years or even more. Pero sa akin minimum 3 years ang magagastos nating panahon para ma-rehabilitate ang Marawi.
So 3 years para ma-rehabilitate. Kasama na po dito yung mga paglilinis at iba pa pong mga activity.
Opo, kasama na po yan yung clearing, then putting up of all the infrastructures, roads, bridges, yung mga canals, sewage treatment, pati na po yung mga water systems natin sa electrical systems.
Ito po, meron tayong nabasa at na news item about doon sa sinabi po ng Task Force Bangon Marawi, kaugnay noong gagawin nilang rehabilitation doon sa Marawi. Totoo po ba na hindi na po gagamit ng procurement law o hindi na magbibiding para sa rehabilitation? Gagawin na lang po yung tinatawag nating Swiss Challenge. This is a form of public procurement where in the case the government publishes an unsolicited bid or proposal and other parties can match or exceed it. This is a new system which hasten the rehabilitation of Marawi. Babaliwalain na po ba yung procurement policy sa pamamagitan po ng extension ng martial law ay pwede itong magawa? Ito po ba ay totoo, Mr. Administrator?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, the current procurement law is in effect. Hindi po natin isasabihan. Kaya lang po, doon sa Marawi, may mga procurement dyan na agaran kaagad. Kaya ina-allow tayo, case-to-case basis lang, pinapaintulutan tayo ng gobyerno na magkaroon tayo ng emergency purchase, like ng pagkain, saka yung mga iba pang kailangan kaagad, mga gamot. Pero yun pong mga ibang material ay dumadaan po sa...
Hindi po, ang tinutukoy po dito, Mr. Administrator, ay yung rehabilitation mismo. Hindi po yung mga immediate na pangangailangan ng mga bakwit.
Hindi po. Hindi po. Dadaan lahat yan sa proper procurement procedure.
Okay.
Your
Last na lang po,
Honor,
Mr.
your time
Speaker.
is up, Your Honor.
Magkano po ang ine-expect ng ating gobyernong magagastos sa bala, sa bomba, at anumang gamit panggera sa isang taon na gagawin natin na martial law sa Mindanao?
Wala pa po kaming figure na exact kasi hindi naman natin alam kung mapapawakbak tayo ng araw-araw dyan o minsan isang linggo o minsan isang buwan. So it depends on the encounters that we have with the lawless elements and hopefully ma-minimize natin yan at ma-minimize din natin yung ating gastos. Ang hinahanap po natin ngayon ay ma-reimburse kami, ma-reimburse yung armed forces nung ginamit nila nung itong martial law na to, nitong taon na to, na 4 billion. Kasi po, yung nagamit namin yung ating stocks for the whole armed forces, At kung maibalik sa amin yung pera na yon, makapag-stock ulit kami, and that will hopefully sustain us for the next year.
Mr. Speaker, next to
Majority
interpolate is
Leader.
the distinguished gentleman from the 1st District of Cebu. I move that we recognize the Honorable Raul Del Mar.
The Honorable Dalmar is recognized to interpolate. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Majority Leader, Speaker, Senate President, and distinguished resource persons. I believe that there is really no more justification and no more reason for this proposed second extension of martial law to a more lengthy period of 1 year. The conditions of the proclamation and the first extension cannot be used anymore for this extension, as the said conditions then have materially and substantially changed now. This is confirmed by no less than Secretary Lorenzana when he said specifically that conditions have substantially changed. And earlier on, he was also quoted to have said, when hostilities were over and practically victory was achieved by our armed forces in Marawi, to have said that there is now the termination of combat operations. To which the President has also been quoted as saying that the Marawi has been liberated from terrorist influence. So, this being the case, Mr. Speaker, what is used as a justification are merely threats or the regrouping and the recruitment of the enemies and other parts of peace and order problems in other parts of Mindanao, which I believe does not necessitate the extension of martial law, because these are conditions and criminalities and illegal acts and violence that can be ably handled by our armed forces. We have the highest confidence in our armed forces that we believe that they are capable of addressing these concerns. Now, let me also ask our resource persons, isn't it the fact that even if the fighting has been won in Marami and the threats to peace and order in the other parts of Mindanao have been addressed by the armed forces?
May I remind the gentleman,
Do
your
you
time
believe?
is up.
Yes, I went up. Do you agree that there will always be threats? You cannot avoid threats. They will always continue. And defeating the terrorists, they will also resurrect again. But these are matters and conditions that no longer sporadic skirmishes, no longer necessary for the further extension of martial law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Next to interpolate is the lady from Kabataan. I move that we recognize the Honorable Sara Elago.
The Honorable Elago is recognized to make her interpellation. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, nakakalap ang Regional Human Rights Commission ng ARMM ng mahigit 14,000 na testimonya ng mga paglabag sa karapatang pantao sa kasagsagan ng gyera sa Marawi. Sa ulat naman ng International Interfaith Humanitarian Mission, may 5 kaso ng indiscriminate firing, 6 na illegal arrest, 16 na threats, harassment, at intimidation na perpetrated mismo ng military. Hindi pa po dyan kasama ang mga ulat dito sa report sa kalagayan ng mga internally displaced persons natin ng Commission on Human Rights, kung saan napakaraming mga illegal arrest, napakaraming mga banta, mga harassment, intimidation, looting, at marami pang iba na paglabag sa karapatang pantao. Mr. Speaker, hindi ba sa ganitong mga kalagayan na ating narinig, ang AFP rin mismo ang naghahasik ng lagim at takot sa Mindanao? Hindi ba na ang pang-aabuso mismo ng ating mga uniformed personnel, ng ating military, ang siyang threat sa public safety? Hindi ba yan ay isang malinaw rin na kaso ng terorismo sa ating mga kababayan, Mr. Speaker? Sa briefing din po kahapon, sinabi na wala pa raw natatanggap na complaint hinggil sa human rights ang Office of the President o ang ating AFP. Hahayaan ba natin na ang kabagalan natin sa burokrasya would get in the way of justice?
May I be allowed to reply to that, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President? Hindi po totoo yun na yung AFP ang naglalabag ng mga karapatang pangtao sa Mindanao. Hindi po kami. We have strict guidance and rules to be followed by our soldiers in operations. At hindi
Mr.
po ako
Speaker,
naniniwala
imbestigahan po ba nila
na
ang mga
kami
reports
ang
na yun?
nagdadala ng lagim sa Mindanao. Kung titiran po ninyo ang record namin, kami po yung nagpipigil ng mga taong naghahasik ng lagim.
Mr. Speaker, ibig sabihin ba nito, sinasabi ng ating sekretary na nagsisinungaling itong libo-libo na ating mga kababayan na nag-report na nga ng mga testimonya? Ang sabi pa nga nila sa isang mission, Mr. Speaker, ano ang laban ng bibig sa bala? Kaya nga naman, hinahamon natin ang AFP mismo na siya mismong mag-imbestiga sa mga ito. Sa katunayan, Mr. Speaker, noon pa lamang na ating tinatalakay dito ang hinggil sa extension ng martial law sa Mindanao. Sinabi na nila na imbestigahan, pero hanggang ngayon wala pa tayong nakikita na nananagot sa lahat ng mga paglabag sa karapatang pantao na iyan.
Mr. Speaker, hindi po nakakarating sa amin yung report na yan ng mga sundalong naglalabag ng mga karapatang pangtao. Hindi ko po alam kung saan nakukuha ng congressman.
Mr.
Pero kung
Speaker,
bigyan po kami ng at imbestigahan namin kung nasaan itong mga nangyari, mga pangyayari ito.
Mr. Speaker, sinabi ko na po ang mga sources nito, no, ng mga ulat na ito. Kaya wala po tayong makita na nabatayan sa pag-extend ng martial law na ito, kundi paghingi lamang ng free pass ng AFP para sa mas marami pa na paglabag ng mga karapatang pantao. Mr. Speaker, let me go to my next question. As the representative of the youth, the inheritors of our future, I am deeply enraged that the administration is again resorting to an all-out war militaristic approach, which has already been utilized by past administrations, but all have repeatedly and miserably failed. Mr. Speaker, kapag ganito, yung mga pag-asa ng bayan mismo natin, ang tinatanggalan natin ng pag-asa. Hindi ba sapat na wake-up call na sa atin, na sinasabi natin na bumabalik yung mga nagre-rebelde at nagpapatuloy o lumalakas pa nga yung rebellion? Dahil yung mga ugat ng kung bakit marami tayong kababayan na nag-aarmas, yung kahirapan, yung kawalan ng lupa, paglabag sa karapat-tao, hindi po natin nare-resolba.
Honorable Elago, your time is up.
Mr. Speaker, can I have another minute of extension, please?
Mr. Speaker.
For my last manifestation, Mr. Speaker, before the resource speakers.
Make one more question and I think I will accommodate it.
Mr. Speaker, sinabi po ng ating executive secretary, we are not seeking unlimited martial law. We are seeking unlimited peace. And this representation has all the reason to believe that this is a blatant lie. Sa ginagawa po nila na yung mga nananawagan yung mga magsasaka na nananawagan sa kanilang lupa, yung mga manggagawa na nananawagan para sa disenteng sahod, yung mga lumad na noon pa lamang wala pang Maute, wala pang Abu Sayyaf, wala pang BIFF, wala pang NPA, ay lumalaban na para sa kanilang mga lupang ninuno. Kung sila mismo ay inaatake para lang magbigay daan para sa interes ng mga malalaking negosyo at dayuhan sa ating bansa, Yan po talaga ay isang malaking kasinungalingan. Ang gusto po yatang mangyari dito ng ating administration,
Mr. Speaker.
hindi unlimited peace, kundi unlimited plunder, unlimited na pandarambong sa yaman na likas ng Mindanao at
Just a
ng
gentle
Pilipinas.
reminder to the lady
Maraming
that-
salamat, Mr. Speaker.
Here is the
With
1
that,
minute.
Mr. Speaker, next to interpolate is the lady from Kusug Tausug Party List. I move that we recognize the Honorable Shirley Tan.
The Honorable Tan is recognized.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
just a few points of clarification. I just have 2 questions. This concerns me because I am from Sulu. I am from Mindanao. My first question is, BBL is a priority measure. If BBL is passed and ratified into law before the expiration of the proposed extension of martial law in Mindanao, will this martial law still be effective in the BBL area, Mr. Speaker?
Majority Leader, will you respond to the question of the lady? This is about our schedule. about
May,
this-
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, may we have the question again from the lady?
If BBL is passed and ratified into law before the expiration of the proposed extension of martial law in Mindanao, will this martial law still be effective in the BBL area?
Yes, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker. We believe so.
For my second question, Mr. Speaker, one of the grounds for
But
the
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, we would like to graciously remind the lady that she should address the questions in this interpellation to our resource persons, Mr.
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
President, Mr.
Yes,
Speaker.
if your question is about the extension of martial law, you may proceed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one of the grounds for the extension of martial law is the continuing existence and recruitment of the CPP NPA in Mindanao. But there are also NPAs in Luzon and Visayas. Therefore, if martial law is good for Mindanao, isn't martial law also good for Luzon and Visayas, Mr. Speaker? Any of the resource persons can answer, Mr. Speaker.
Will the Secretary of Defense answer the query?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, I think the reason why the NPA in Mindanao are included is because of the intensive. Kasi po yung malakas po yung 45% of the NPA in the whole Philippines are in Mindanao. And they are creating a havoc in, especially in Eastern Mindanao. The burn equipment, the attack government forces, kidnap government local officials and also police and military. Kaya po sila na-include yan. In Visayas and Mindanao, Luzon, manageable po yung activities ng mga CPP-NPA dyan. Kaya I don't think that will be used to spread or to include Visayas and Luzon in the martial law.
But Mr. Speaker, there are still NPAs and they could also make attacks in Luzon and Visayas. Therefore, as the representative of Kusug Tausug Party List, I reiterate my stand that martial law should be extended not just in Mindanao but also in Luzon and in Visayas if it serves the best interest of our nation, Mr. Speaker. Also, Mr. Speaker, I would like to extend my support to our government with regard to the extension of martial law kung ito po ay ikakabuti ng ating bansa at saka sana po hindi na mauulit yung nangyari sa Marawi. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, next to interpellate is the lady from Gabriela. I move that we recognize the Honorable Arlene Brosas.
The Honorable Arlene Brosas is recognized to make her interpellation. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it has been 197 days since President Duterte declared the implementation of martial law and the suspension of writ of habeas corpus in Mindanao. The Constitution only allows this action for a period of not exceeding 60 days. Ngayon, tinatalakay na naman ito. Humihingi ng extension. Susunod, what's keeping the AFP na humingi ulit ng susunod na extension o di kaya palawakin pa nga ito. Samantalang ilan sa mga inaalala po ng kinatawan na ito ang mga pumapasok na report kaugnay sa mga paglabag sa karapatang pantao. Una po, nais kong malaman mula sa administrator natin kung meron ba silang narinig na itala ng mga violation of civil and political rights sa pagpatupad ng martial law?
Mr. President, wala pa kaming narinig o na-report na paglabag sa karapatang pangtao sa implementation ng martial law sa Mindanao.
Mr. Speaker, nais ko pong isite ang ilan sa mga halimbawa na ito dahil importante po sanang marinig aktual sa kanila kung ano yung nangyari. Pero dahil hindi po tayo pumapayag na magkaroon ng mga resource person ngayon mula sa mga tao sa kanila na ayaw, ilalahad ko po ang ilan lamang sa mga halimbawa nito. Dahil sinasabi natin na pangunahin ng public safety para sa atin. Ang ninanais ng martial law na ito ay public safety. Pero ano nga ba ang nangyari ng mga nakaraan mula March 23, 2017, araw ng pagdeklara ng ML sa Mindanao, binomba ang Marawi, apektado ang 96 barangay, 325,294 residents, 65,198 families. Sa araw ding iyon, pinatay ng 6 na suspected state agents ng 71st IBPA, si Pedro Pandagay sa sitio Biaao, Barangay Anitapan, Mabili, Compostela Valley. May 24, 2017, Ramos Malik gunned down by the AFP in Barangay Cameri, Lanao del Sur. March 26, 2017, Virgilio Balungag was gunned down by 3 suspected state agents in Purok 8A, North Poblacion, Don Carlos, Bukidnon. Marami pa po, April 2, April 6, April 8, 23, May 3, May 9, May 27, 31, June 1, June 9, June 10, halos buwan-buwan po. June 23, 2017, forced evacuation of 1,000 residents of President Rojas, North Cotabato, and Damulog, Bukidnon, due to presence of 240 soldiers of the 39th IBPA. June 25, 2017, bombing of President Rojas, North Cotabato. June 25, 2017, forced evacuation of more than 1,000 residents of Sitio Datal, Filao. Pinakamalapit pa po, November 29, 2017, 13 armed security guards and 2 suspected goons of Filipinas Palm Oil Plantation Incorporated gunned down Lando Moreno in Barangay Maligaya, Rosario, Agusan del Sur. Ngayon po, marami pa po na nakalagay dito na mga paglabag sa karapatang pantao.
Your Honor, your time is up.
I'm winding up, Mr. Speaker. Nais ko pong sabihin na dapat precise tayo sa mga solusyon na gusto natin. At iba po ang BIFF, iba po ang kaso ng CPP, NPA, NDF dahil bukas yan sa usapang pangkapayapaan. Iba rin po ang kaso ng Dawla Islamiyya na sinasabi natin, huwag po natin pagsamasamahin ng lahat.
That the 3 minutes has expired.
Ang nais ko pong sabihin, Mr. Speaker, sa panghuli, ganun din po ang naging reason ng martial law ni Marcos. Sinasamba din ng mga demonyo sa ilalim na Marcos ang pagdeklara ng martial law. Huwag po natin gamitin ito.
The gentleman from the 2nd District of Maguindanao, the Honorable Sajid Magudadatu.
The Honorable Magudadatu is recognized to make his interpellation. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assalamualaikum to all of us here. Mayong mudto sa atong tanan. Mr. Speaker, we are here for a joint session regarding the extension of martial law in Mindanao. And as a representative of the 2nd District of Maguindanao, I fully support the extension of the martial law. Why, Mr. Speaker? well, we should consider the benefits and the advantages when martial law was declared by our President, Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Number one, Mr. Speaker, is the crime rate drastically decreased, particularly in the area of autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. Number two, communities felt secured considering that terrorists cannot easily penetrate the communities and the urban centers. Number three, the highest level of trust on the ground sa ating government troops and the MLF, nagkaroon po sila ng joint operation against the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters. Ito po yung mga nangyayari sa ground. At naging tools po ang martial law. And number four, the communities now cooperates well with law enforcers since they feel that retaliation from terrorists will not happen to them. And the military now can react to the situations more freely with care to human rights compare before na magkaroon ng martial law, yung mga tao ay tinatalian sa kamay. Ngayon, hindi na po. So, yan po ang mga benefits, mga advantages ng mga nagkaroon ng martial law sa Mindanao. It brought peace and security, Mr. Speaker, in the region. And the attack in Marawi was a clear case of rebellion. Now, Mr. Speaker, we all know that different people and with different beliefs and different culture. Sometimes, hindi natin maiwasan magamit ng reliyon. For me, religion is only the foundation of the human being. It is the matter of choosing the color. If you want red, yellow, green, white, and you have to defend that. Marami po nagsasabi, Muslim, the follower of Islam,
Mr. Speaker,
nagamit.
this is to graciously remind the gentleman that the 3 minutes has expired. The floor leader is constrained to move for the
Mr.
next
Speaker,
interpellator.
can I have one more question?
Kindly wind up your...
Yes, my concern, Mr. Speaker, is ano ba yung approach ng ating government troops to counter sa lahat ng ginagawa nitong mga terrorist na ginagamit yung literal interpretation of the Holy Quran or the Bible para lang ma-convince yung mga tao na susunod sa kanila, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, with that, I move that we
Majority
recognize
Leader.
the gentleman from Akbayan, the Honorable Tom Villarin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Senate President.
The Honorable Villarin is recognized.
Well, the elephant in the room, Mr. Speaker, is when will martial law be implemented nationwide? I think that was the gist of why this discussion is now being conducted in the House in a joint session. Why am I saying this? First is we have desensitized the meaning of martial law. Martial law supposedly should only come in, military control will only come in if civilian governments are not functioning. Secondly, there should be actual rebellion or invasion. But again, we have desensitized and even diluted such provisions. And thirdly, here the issue of there should be lawless violence, but now even mere peace and order issues are reduced to a justification for the imposition of martial law. Now, the practical implications here is that barangay elections will definitely be postponed, the May 2018. And perhaps, because by extension, elections will commence in October, then that elections will also be postponed. So we are seeing here, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, the threat that democracy will be obliterated due to martial law. It might be hypothetical, they would say, but again, these are real scenarios. Without clear outcomes, without specifics of how martial law will happen and what would be the objective, both political and of course the military objective, martial law will obliterate democracy through a no election scenario. I would like to seek a comment or an answer from our executive branch on that point, Mr. Speaker.
May I be allowed to comment on the statement? As we have explained earlier, sir, the matter of postponing any elections lies upon the discretion of the Commission on Elections, which is an independent constitutional body based on recommendations from or by people who know the peace and order situation in the particular localities concerned. But as far as we are concerned, the proclamation of martial law or its extension is not intended to lead to a situation where elections will not be conducted. That is never the purpose of the President's proclamation of martial law.
Thank you for that. President Duterte has pushed for Congress to convene as a constituent assembly. And this afternoon, the House of Representatives will discuss the CONAS resolution. And most likely, we will support that proposal of the President. And again, in a CONAS scenario, this amendment that elections in 2019 be postponed could also be a scenario. So, given this two political updates or developments,
Mr. Speaker, I would like to
can we now
remind the
say that
gentleman
I'm just
that his
winding
time
up,
is up.
Mr. Speaker. Can we now say that we are still in a functioning democracy? I think that's the big question, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Iligan City, Representative Frederick Xiao.
The Honorable Xiao is recognized to make his interpellation. You have 3 minutes.
Mr. President.
You may proceed, Your Honor.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, as a Mindanaoan, as a representative of Iligan City, security and political stability are among my top concerns. Recovery and rehabilitation efforts for Marawi will not prosper if the people's safety is not assured, and the remaining pockets of terrorism are not quashed. I am with consonance with the citizenry of Iligan in extending martial law in Mindanao by 1 year. However, any kind of abuse made by the military should and will not be tolerated. Mindanao is ready to forge ahead as a new economic powerhouse of the Philippines. And not just in agriculture,
but also in manufacturing, services, and tourism. The security and safety of workers or the citizens, investors, tourists will be assured in the short term by the extension of martial law and political solutions such as progressive charter change, the BBL, and more economic legislation empowering local governments and creating jobs for the long term. Thank you very much, Mr. President and Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker,
Majority Leader.
the next to interpolate is Representative Gary Alejano of the Magdalo Party List.
The Honorable Alejano is recognized to make his interpellation. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Senate President, sa ating mga resource persons, and my colleagues, magandang tanghali po. Before I ask my questions, nais ko lamang pasalamatan ang ating armed forces at ang ating Philippine National Police sa kanilang serbisyo sa ating bansa. Thank you very much, sir, for your service to the country. Malaki pong karangalan, naging bahagi po ako ng sandatahang lakas ng Pilipinas. And I hope that the Congress would be able to match our expectations sa inyong serbisyo sa pamagitan ng suporta ng Kongreso. Meron lang po akong ilang katanungan pagdating po sa martial law because martial law is not synonymous to combat operations. Martial law is a policy issue. So meron lang po akong katanungan. Una, for the record, ano ba ho ang karagdagang power ang mabibigay ng martial law and suspension of the writ of habeas corpus as compared sa wala? Dahil po alam ko, nakaranas na rin po tayo ng combat operations in Mindanao, all-out wars, in Basulta, and even in Central Mindanao. Ano po bang pagkakaiba ng meron at wala?
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, if I may be allowed to answer that. Congressman Alejano, palagi ko naman batid mo kung paano nag-ooperate ang ating military. Definitely, tactically, walang kapangyarihang binibigay na tactical ang martial law pagdating sa mga kasundaluhan natin. But we have to understand that martial law does not only address a particular dimension of yung implementation natin ng campaign. Martial law in general tries to provide the operational environment that will allow us to prosecute our mission and succeed in our mission. By operational environment, we take into account yung not only the military aspect, but also the political, the legal, the psychological, the social dimension of the conflict. So it provides this environment for us to succeed. Yun lang po.
Maraming salamat po sa kasagutan. Nonetheless, yung martial law po ay mayroong specific provision sa ating konstitusyon. And yun nga po ang diskusyon dito dahil ako po ay suportado ang ating military sa pagpulso ng kalaban ng Estado, ang terorista at mga rebelding NPA. Ako po ay suportado na dapat habulin natin sila. Pangalawa po, sa pag-extend po ng martial law, meron pong maliwanag na plano at objectives ang ating military. Mapapaliwanag po ba within the year kung ano pong maliwanag na mga objectives? Kasi blanket authority po ito eh. So, gusto nating malaman kung at what stage yung na-accomplish na po yung objectives ng ating extension ng martial law para hindi naman ho parang bulag tayo na binigyan ho ng extension and yet we don't know kung nasaan na po tayo. So, meron po ba tayong maliwanag na plano at pwede po bang ma-provide sa Kongreso?
Meron po tayong plano. Ito pong nirequest natin na extension ng martial law ay batay po sa konteksto ng ating campaign plan na kung titingnan po natin ay tatakbo simula noong 2016 o tumatakbo simula noong 2016 hanggang 2022 kung saan annually meron po tayong mga set na mga targets, objectives, and goals. Nung nirequest po natin itong martial law, tinake into account po natin yung panahon na dapat nating ginugol sa pag-address na iba-ibang threat sa ating bayan mula noong 2016 hanggang sa pangkasalukuyan kung saan na batid po namin na dahil po sa problema natin sa Marawi ay naapektuhan po yung mga objectives at timetable po natin. At yun po ang dahilan kung bakit nagrekomenda ang Armed Forces ng extension po ng martial law, nang sa ganun po, makuha po natin at maibalik natin sa tamang timetable ang ating kampanya para ma-address po natin hindi lamang ang problema ng terorista, kundi ang pangkalahatang problema ng seguridad na po na hinaharap natin pagdating sa internal security.
Maraming salamat po. It is expected that there will be heightened operational tempo. Kung tayo ay susugan po natin ito, lalo na ang BIFF, NPA at Abu Sayyaf. Meron po bang karagdagang suporta sa personnel, sa kagamitan, sa operational fund aside from the budget allocated for the 2018?
Sa ngayon po, naglaan po ang ating pamahalaan ng dagdag na suporta sa ating armed forces para po makapagdagdag tayo ng ating pwersa. Pwersang tao, pwersa ng kagamitan, at mga kinakailangan pa po nating ibang mga resources para siguraduhin pong mapatupad po natin ang ating tungkulin.
So, ibig sabihin po, sir, ay yung pondo for 2018 ay sapat na po para ma-accomplish ang objectives po ng extension of the martial law?
Ang campaign plan po natin, no, sabi ko nga po, base sa ating campaign plan, meron na po tayong nakaprograma na suporta para dito. Ganun pa man, nung in-implement po natin ang martial law, tayo po ay nakatanggap ng dagdag na suporta sa ating pamahalaan para magbigyan po ng pwersa at kaukulang tutok ang ating operasyon para magampanan po ang aming tungkulin.
Kasi po, napakalaking expectations natin sa armed forces pero hindi naman natatapatan ng pondo. Kaya nga importante po, habang ini-expect namin na ma-accomplish yung objectives, dapat tatapatan po namin ng suporta po yan. Kasi magkakaroon po tayo ng leveling of expectations. Ngayon po, sir, nabanggit yung kanina na nagkakaroon tayo ng programa at plano, katulad ng IPSP, which is heavy on winning the hearts and minds of the people because we accepted the fact that the combat operations alone would not suffice. So, babalik ba tayo ulit doon sa parang purely military approach ang pagsolba sa problema sa Mindanao?
Ang approach po natin ngayon sa pag-address ng mga threats, internal security threats, ay yung tinatawag po nating whole of nation approach. Kung saan po hindi lamang po ang military ang kumikilos o may tungkulin na ginagampanan, kundi lahat na po ng ahensya ng ating gobyerno, kasama na po ang ating mga partners sa civilian sectors, mga NGOs, at iba pong mga stakeholders.
Maraming salamat po. Lastly, I would like to request the Executive Department to craft a plan in how to educate high government officials and even members of this Congress their role in the overall national security. Para po maintindihan po namin yung role namin sa kabuuang seguridad ng ating bansa para masuportahan at maintindihan namin ang trabaho po ng ating armed forces at Philippine National Police po.
Honorable Alejano, your time is up.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. Speaker and Senate President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the next to interpellate is Representative Arnie Teves of the 3rd District of Negros.
The Honorable Teves is recognized to make his interpellation. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, everybody, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, and everybody else. I was just in Marawi in Ground Zero a few days ago, and I asked the people on the ground if they wanted martial law. And ang narinig ko doon, mas gusto nila yung martial law. So therefore, who am I to say no? So I'd like to pledge to say that I will support the extension of martial law. Meron lang sana akong request sa leadership natin, sa leadership ng AFP at leadership ng PNP. Pwede ba nagawin natin na yung mga tauhan natin maging approachable at professional? Ibig ko sabihin, kung pumupunta tayo sa Amerika at sa ibang first world countries, yung police nakikita natin as katulong natin or ally natin, hindi natin kinakatakutan. Dito kasi maraming tao na pag nakikita yung militar, sipin nila baka abusuhin tayo nito. Pag nakakita ng police, sasabihin nila baka kutungan tayo nito. Hindi ko naman nila lahat, pero alam nating lahat na ganun ang madalas na tingin ng tao. I have policemen friends and army friends. A lot of them are good people. But we cannot deny the fact that there is this notion of the bad side at marami yon. Request ko lang kay Sir Guerrero at kay Bato at kay Sir Lito Coy ng DILG, pwede ba i-implement natin na maging approachable at professional yung police na hindi kinakatakutan ng tao. Simple lang, sir. Ngayon, pag nagsisearch tayo, ganyan yung hawak. Kailan lang nasa Amerika ako nagsisearch sila, likod ng kamay yung ginagamit. I think that's more professional. Pwede ba?
Ipapatupad po natin yun.
That's all. That's all, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the next to interpolate is Representative Erice of the 2nd District of Caloocan.
The Honorable Erice is recognized to make his interpellation. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Military rule should be a last option. And frequent use of military rule will reduce a democratic country into a banana republic, just like in the Latin America. Meron po akong 3 katanungan. Nung idineklara po ng Pangulo, last year, ang martial law, ay tinanong ko po ang ating kagalang-galang na kalihim ng Tanggulang Pambansa, Secretary Lorenzada, whether the government is incapable, particularly the AFP and the PNP, in crushing terrorism and rebellion within the bounds of the regular processes of the rule of law. If I remember right, I cited examples of New York, 9/11, the subway carnage in UK, and the continuing grave threats in the US and the UK. Pero kahit minsan po, hindi inisip ng mga demokratikong bansa na ito na magdeklara ng martial law. Ang sagot po sa atin ng ating kagalang-galang na kalihim, ang sabi niyo po, ang US at ang UK ay may mga magagandang batas, lalo na sa homeland security, na wala sa ating bansa. Kaya ang una ko pong tanong, pagkarampo ng maraming buwan, ano na po kaya ang nagawa ng ating gobyerno para mabago po o ma-improve yung mga legislation patungkol sa homeland security? Meron na po bang tayong efforts to approach Congress so that we can address the limitations under the present system? Kaysa po palagi na lang tayong hihingi ng martial law. At natatakot po ako na ito ay maging bisyo na o it might become a habit na pagka may konting gulo, hihingi na ng martial law. Pangalawa pong tanong, nasisiguro ko na ang New People's Army, kung magkakaroon po ng mahigpitang labanan sa Mindanao, ay mag-i-intensify din ng kanilang operasyon sa Luzon at sa Visayas. Kung magkakaganito po, under the same circumstances, will the AFP recommend the declaration of martial law in the Visayas and in Luzon? Kung magkakaroon din po ng katulad ng mga labanan sa Mindanao, dito po sa Luzon at
Remind
Visayas,
Honorable Erice, your time is up.
hihingin din po. Yes, that's why I'm asking the 3 questions at once. Hihingin din po ba ng armed forces ang malawakan o pambansang deklarasyon ng martial law? At huling tanong po, pangatlong tanong, ano po ba ang gagawin ng gobyerno sa loob ng 1 taon upang gapiin ang terorismo, ang New People's Army, na hindi magagawa
Mr. Speaker, I would like to remind
kung
the
walang
gentleman that
martial
his
law?
time is up.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the last to interpolate is the Representative Abdullah Dimaporo of the 2nd District of Lanao del Norte.
The Honorable Abdullah Dimaporo is recognized to make his interpellation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mine is just a manifestation.
Hindi pa po nakakasagot sa tanong ko. Tatlong
Mr.
tanong po, wala pang sagot.
Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, may I be allowed to reply to the good congressman from Caloocan? Doon po sa mga binanggit nyo kanina kung anong ginagawa natin sa mga batas na sinabi kong kulang tayo. Meron po kaming mga sinumiting mga panukalang batas sa Kongreso na ngayon ay tinitingnan katulad ng amendments ng National Security Act. Yung isa pong aming proyekto ay yung National ID na makakatulong po ng malakihan. Yung mandatory registration ng mga SIM cards, ng mga cellphones. Saka meron po rin kaming iniisip na mga panukalang batas katulad ng revision ng ating National Defense Act of 1935. Yun po yung mga ating mga proyekto natin para mapabago natin yung ating mga batas. Para naman makakatulong ang ating batas sa pagsugpo sa mga kriminalidad. Doon po sa inyong sinasabing kung magkakaroon ba ng martial law sa Visayas at Mindanao, hindi po namin nakikita yan sa hinaharap. Pero depende po sa mga mangyayari sa mga darating na panahon. Ang makakapag-decision pa lang po yun ay si Presidente lang kung kailangan isali natin ang Visayas at Mindanao sa martial law. Doon po sa tanong ninyo kung ano ang magagawa sa isang taon na ng martial law sa Mindanao ay sasagutin po yan ni General Guerrero.
Gaya po nung nasabi ko na po kanina, no? Meron po kaming plano, timetable, mga targets, mga objectives na amin pong ipapatupad at plano namin ma-accomplish within the 1-year period. Ito po ay naka-breakdown into monthly goals and targets, quarterly hanggang semi-annually, annually po. Yung mga detalye po nito, I am sorry I could not disclose at this point, probably later on po kasi ito po yung operational information. Mako-compromise po mga plano namin kung ilalahad ko po ngayon ito.
Hindi nyo po ba magagawa ito kung walang martial law?
Gaya po na nasabi ko, ang request po namin sa martial law ay batay po sa konteksto ng aming kabuuang kampanya. Kung
Mr.
saan ang
Speaker.
kinukonsider po namin, hindi lang po yung military action, kundi ang kinakailangan po namin ma-develop na operational environment para po ma-accomplish namin ang mission.
Maraming salamat po.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, now we would like to recognize the last interpellator, Representative Abdullah Di Maporo.
Thank you,
Honorable
Mr. Speaker.
Dimapor is recognized, the last representative to make interpellation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mine is a manifestation, Mr. Speaker. We in Mindanao, as we have heard, majority of us would like to extend martial law. And this is because we have seen the effectiveness in our desire for our military, the police, to be protecting us. We have seen in Marawi City, Mr. Speaker, that suddenly the Mounties and the ISIS made themselves known. And we were not able to see them sprouting, becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Because our ways before martial law were insufficient. Now, we still hear them recruiting in Llano del Sur and also in Sulu. And the recruitment that they are doing now, training people that they have convinced may be later deployed in other cities of our country. What we have done in Marawi City, Mr. Speaker, is just to win a battle. The war declared upon us by the ISIS and the Mauti is still going on. And for this, Mr. Speaker, I would be very happy if we will unanimously support the request of the President to extend martial law in Mindanao. We need it, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much.